Chapter 497. Under Wang Rulong's lead, the three of them entered the drill ground, under the watchful eyes of the crowd. This seemed to be a specially designated meeting place. Many awnings had been set up, and the upper-class people of Ming Province were already sitting in them. Some of them had complicated looks in their eyes, some looked hostile, and some had flickering eyes. The first group of people were the squires who had no direct interest in this matter. The only reason they were willing to speak up for justice was that they were coerced by the Wang family. Most of these people were very capable and smart. They had exchanged information before they came, so they knew that this matter was probably not as simple as it seemed. It should be related to the open and covert struggle between Tensei Province and the northern faction. They cursed in their hearts, F***CK. Let them fight. It's none of our business. The second group of people were probably the straightforward generals. Because of Lu Zhou's presence, they took this matter as a clarion call for a group of civil officials who only knew how to sell their mouths and paint to launch a counterattack against the group of generals who had built their reputation. How dare AF** King Prefecture Overseer put a great general under house arrest? You must be a fool. The third type of people were the ones who were avoiding eye contact. They were all guilty and were all civil officials. Lu Xiaoyan, one of the representatives from Mingzhou who was slowly walking towards them, was their immediate superior. As civil officials, these people had come to support the Wang Consortium and go against their boss. Although they had no choice but to do so, it was still rather inappropriate of them to do so. Therefore, they tried their best to lower their heads and shrink their bodies to avoid being glanced at by the old man. It was one thing that the law did not punish the majority. No matter how vengeful Lu Zhou was, he would not punish all the civil officials present. However, if the old man glanced at them and remembered them, it would be another thing if he vented his anger on them later. Sun Lang looked left and right as he walked. He felt as if he had returned to the sports meeting in school. It was just that the expressions of the people here were simply those of the so-called upper-class society. They were sanctimonious, but each had their own ulterior motives. It was completely the world of adults. Compared to the group of carefree students in school who only knew how to rub and rut, they were much more advanced. He suddenly laughed and whispered, "Did you see that?" When the country gentry and scholars found out that they had been dragged into the mess between the Heavenly Policy Mansion and the Northern faction, they were extremely unhappy. If they had the chance, they would definitely not hesitate to slap the Wang family into a black face. Lu Xiaoyan was shocked and subconsciously looked at Wang Rulong, who was walking in front. Sun Lang said indifferently, "Don't worry, he can't hear you. Don't make any big movements and don't speak loudly." Lu Zhou had just heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Sun Lang continue to say, "The civil officials are in a similar situation. They were forced to stand against you and offended their superior. This is all the Wang family's fault. If they have the chance, they'll make the Wang family fall." Although the military officials are more supportive of the Wang family, their support is based on the fact that the Wang family is a great general's wife who wants to save her husband. If they find out that this is all a scam and that the Wang family is the one who wants to murder Qi Guanyin, I'm afraid the general's wife will have to suffer the vermilion blood. He smiled and said, "As for us, there's no need to talk about us. We're here to cause trouble." Old Hu frowned and asked, "What are you trying to say?" "I just want to say that there are so many people here, but none of them are the Wang family's friends or companions. All of them are her potential enemies and chess pieces. Everything around her is not only a tool in her hands, but also a powder keg that can backfire at any time and consign her to eternal damnation." She actually made up a big lie and made everyone circle around her, watching her walk a tightrope. She doesn't care about the potential danger and the consequences of being exposed. Sun Lang smiled and said, "This woman is quite impressive. I'm starting to admire her. She really doesn't care about her own life." Lu Zhou and Old Hu were stunned. Old Hu muttered to himself, "That's true. She's too hardworking. Empress is really good at managing her subordinates. I can't believe he's nurtured such a fearless death warrior." A death warrior. Sun Lang suddenly remembered the Wang family's behavior when he interacted with them. He shook his head and said, "Speaking of which, it's strange. This woman doesn't seem like a qualified death warrior. Her love life is a little too rich. Did they get something on her? Oh, right. I'm afraid her younger brother is in the hands of that Iron Man. Let's not talk about this for now. We're almost there. Hushoshin raised his head and looked ahead. The drill ground was decorated like a coliseum. There was a ring of spectators around them. There was a high platform in the center, and there were awnings on both sides. It was probably a place for the Wong family and the Liu family to engage in a verbal battle. The spectators below were munching on melon seeds and watching the show. Old Hu recalled Sun Lang's childish decapitation plan, and his heart pounded. Lord Liu, will you be all right? Liu Shoyin, on the other hand, was rather confident in Sun Lang. He chuckled and said, I'm a civil official after all. I used to be an imperial censor. I'm skilled in both civil and martial arts. Whether it's civil or martial arts, I rarely meet a match in the imperial court. At the very least, I won't be at a disadvantage. Besides, don't I have you backing me up, young master? Sun Lang nodded calmly. Lord Liu, you have a good eye. To tell you the truth, whether it's a verbal battle in the romance of the Three Kingdoms or a discussion of pellets and reversing the referee, I'm very good at them. I'm also good at playing RPG games. I'm very familiar with the routine of immediately jumping in after failing to persuade someone. These words succeeded in raising the uneasiness in Old Hu's heart to another level. However, things had already come to a head, and there was no room for regret. If the negotiation failed, it would be fine if this guy threw a big windmill, but if he threw a canned herring at Old Hu's head, Old Hu couldn't help but shudder at the thought of that scene. After all, Sun Lang said that he would be responsible for leading Wang Shi when they broke out of the encirclement. Bastard. Hopefully, Sun Lang wouldn't make things too big this time. After the three of them discussed the details, Sun Lang removed the one-sided voice isolation technique. Wang Rulong still didn't notice it at all. He led the three of them to the high platform. Madam, the three guests have been brought here. Opposite them was a tall pergola with bamboo curtains. Wang Shi's figure was sitting behind it. Her voice sounded, please sit down. In fact, it wasn't just Sun Lang who was curious. Hu Shouxin and Lord Liu were also a little curious. Qi Guanyin was clearly on their side, and everyone knew the truth of this matter and Wang Shi's identity. Wang Shi knew this, but she still put on such a big show. What kind of trick did she have to turn the situation around? Seeing that Sun Lang didn't throw the canned herring on the spot, they sat down and waited to see what Wang Shi wanted to do. The design of this negotiation or meeting was very interesting, because the banner was to invite the general's righteous officials and brave soldiers to rescue the general. The negotiation with the kidnappers had to be open and transparent. The two sides stood on the high platform and talked. Their voices were transmitted through internal energy. Coupled with the unique design of the high platform, it was enough for the surrounding audience to hear clearly. As for the soldiers on the outside, forget it. They were just decorations. The two sides sat down, and everyone waited with anticipation. On one side was the governor of Mingzhou, and on the other side was the general's wife. This extremely high-level quarrel could definitely be recorded in the annals of Mingzhou, and future generations would take delight in talking about it. Wang Shi was silent for a moment before she said faintly, Mr. Sun, is my husband doing well? Sun Lang and the others were stunned. Firstly, they did not expect Wang Shi to speak to Sun Lang directly. Secondly, they did not expect her to ask such a question. Sun Lang sneered slightly. Madam, do you want your husband to be well or not? Wang Shi sighed. What are you talking about, Mr. Sun? I'm his wife. Which wife doesn't want her husband to be well? Naturally, I want him to be safe and have everything go according to his wishes. Upon hearing this, Sun Lang only frowned. However, Old Hu and Lu Zhou looked angry. This woman was too shameless for doing such a thing. As a good husband in the empire, Hu Shouxin was known as the man who remembered the day his wife gave birth. His tolerance for this kind of B***tch was even lower than an honest man. When he heard Wang Shi's words, he was furious. Fortunately, he still remembered to leave a way out for Qi Guanyin. He did not make a scene. Instead, he slammed the table and said sternly, You want your husband to be well? What you're doing? How are you hoping for your husband to be well? You're pushing him into a pit of fire. Wang Shi only sighed. I had no choice. I had no choice. Their answers were vague. Although the people involved knew what they were talking about, it sounded different to outsiders. Hu Shouxin was accusing Wang Shi of instigating the army to besiege the city. If this were to happen in the future, it would bring endless trouble to Qi Guanyin and the others. On the other hand, Wang Shi said she wanted to save her husband and had no choice. When Old Hu saw how slippery Wang Shi was and how her intentions were unclear, he could not make up his mind. He turned to look at Sun Lang. Sun Lang said indifferently, Madam, when you said you had no choice, did someone force you to do this? Wang Shi said seriously, To tell you the truth, this is my own decision. It's my choice. These words sounded even more confusing. Not only was Sun Lang silent, but even the audience was confused. They vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the situation. Wang Shi seemed to be hiding something, but they could not make up their minds. For a moment, the audience was in a mess. Many people were whispering to each other. Sun Lang felt a little annoyed. If you want to argue, then so be it. Although everyone would not make it as heavy as Zhuge Liang arguing with a group of scholars, at least it would look like a debate, right? If you're aggressive and make irresponsible remarks, I'll find an opportunity to say F asterisk king bullsh asterisk T. Obviously, this was a real duel. Wang Shi's riddles really made him very unhappy. Sun Lang realized that he could not see through the thoughts of the woman in front of him. After all, the human heart was very difficult to predict, especially when it came to a F asterisk king dog's human heart. After a couple hooked up, their souls would change. Whether it was their thinking patterns or the ratio of rationality to emotion, they would develop in an unpredictable direction. Especially when it involved the two of them, the words and actions of this couple would be unpredictable. It was even more difficult to predict than Third Brother's brown bullet. When Sun Lang thought of this, he became even more annoyed. So he slowly rose to his feet, ready to kick over the table and begin an earth-shattering act of persuasion. Not persuasion by words, but persuasion by truth. Although he did not know what Wang Shi was thinking, his intuition told him that it was undoubtedly the best choice to make this woman shut up, tie her up, and throw her to Qi Guanyin and Mingzhou. Unexpectedly, Wang Shi suddenly said, Mr. Sun, I have a request. Sun Lang was slightly startled. What request? The general's wife said softly, I don't know why you're holding my husband. I just want to see my husband. Can you agree? If it's inconvenient for him to come out, can you bring me to Mingzhou so that I can see him and see if he's safe? As soon as she finished speaking, there was an uproar. Some of the hot-tempered generals shouted that the madam should not be allowed to see them. However, the old and cunning ones were stunned for a moment before they realized what was going on. They praised her softly and explained to the juniors next to them. What a good plan. She's offering herself to the other party. Should he take it or not? The army outside the city was eyeing them covetously. No matter how bold they would not dare to hold the madam captive again. If they agreed, the madam would be able to confirm the great general's condition. If they did not agree, it would mean that the other party was hiding something. It was obvious that the madam's plan was very clever in the eyes of those with brains. However, to Sun Lang and the other two, it caught them off guard. Hey, why is she offering herself to me? Is she crazy? Hu Shouxin and Lu Zhou were still in a daze. Sun Lang's eyes flashed. He seemed to have guessed Wang Shi's plan. He scoffed and said, Of course I'll bring you to Mingzhou. However, before that, Before Lu Zhou could finish speaking, Wang Shi said anxiously, When I see my husband, I'll personally apologize to him. Hence, the onlookers praised her again. As expected, the madam is devoted to the marshal. After all, it's ridiculous for a woman to gather an army and besiege Mingzhou. With the great general's strict rule, I'm afraid he'll fly into a rage when he hears about this. This is a serious crime. After all, I wonder how the great general will deal with this. However, Sun Lang and the other two understood the other meaning behind Wang Shi's words. Hu Shouxin's eyes were filled with bewilderment. He looked at Wang Shi and said in shock. Wang Shi was about to say something when someone shouted from below, "Sister!" In an instant, the three of them could see Wang Shi's body trembling violently, even through the bamboo curtain. Sun Lang said in surprise, "Isn't that voice from the Yamen? He's not dead yet?" A white figure flashed, and Wang Shi ran out of the pergola. The two generals in charge of guarding her chased after her, but they couldn't stop her. The general's wife stood on the high platform and looked around. She shouted anxiously, "Brother, brother, where are you? Where are you?" There was a commotion in the crowd. A handsome young man with red lips and white teeth squeezed out of nowhere. He recognized him with his sharp eyes and said, "It's Qi Guanyan's brother-in-law." Xiaonai, who hadn't seen him in a long time, scrambled up the high platform and rushed to his sister. Sister, sister and brother reunited. What a touching scene. Wang Shi hugged her brother and carefully looked at his face. Her eyes were red, and her body was trembling. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't speak. She seemed to be excited, or perhaps afraid. After a while, she slowly whispered, as if she had exhausted all her strength. "Brother, why are you here? Compared to this," Wang Yin suddenly shouted in the Yamen, quickly exposed Hu Shouxin and Sun Lang's true colors. "They use you and me to threaten my brother-in-law, and they wanted him to join them. For this reason, Sun Lang even kidnapped me. There are servants in the house who can testify." Quickly, the audience was silent for a moment, and then there was a huge noise and even a wave of voices. Wang Shi looked at her brother in a daze. A few days ago in the deep valley, her brother was sternly questioning her, but today she seemed to think of something and said in a trembling voice, "Brother." Then she saw a scene that almost made her suffocate. With his back facing Sun Lang and the other two and facing her younger brother, a sinister smile that was extremely unfamiliar to her instantly appeared on that familiar face. It made her hair stand on end. Wang Yin whispered with a smile, "You have to think about me, sister?" The way he called her sister was so strange yet familiar, as if it was another person. Wang Shi lowered her head and said slowly, "Sure enough, I got it." She raised her head again, and an incomparably gentle expression appeared on her face. Just like before, just like in the past, an elder sister was like a mother. She gave her younger brother all the love and gentleness that her mother did not have time to give her younger brother. She raised him, educated him, and loved him. She reached out and touched her brother's face. Just like that day in the courtyard in the deep valley. She said the same words as that day, but she did not finish them. "Don't blame me, brother," she whispered. "Who asked me to be?" Tears fell silently. "Mrs. Qi." A sharp blade flashed out from her waist, as fast as thunder. A dagger. It was this dagger that pierced Uncle Chan's body. It pierced his heart. It wanted to destroy his blood supply. It was pulled out, and blood splashed. The blade rose, as fast as lightning. It cut his throat. It wanted to stop breathing. Continue. The blade stabbed horizontally, as fast as the wind. It pierced from the mouth to the back of the head. It wanted to destroy his mind. It could not be merciful. There was no way. There was no saving him. He had already realized it. Wang Shi gritted her teeth, and tears rolled down her face. Her body could not help but tremble. This was the second person she had killed. "What am I doing?" At this moment, the dead body in front of her suddenly moved. The hand that should have been on the verge of death was so strong that it suddenly strangled Wang Shi's throat. Wang Yin, who should have died immediately, opened his blood-red eyes and roared, you woman, you actually killed your younger brother. You have misled me from the beginning. You have betrayed Master from the beginning. Everything that happened in the past few days was deliberately arranged by you. You abominable. It's me. But it's also you." Wang Shi burst into tears and hissed, "Get out of my brother's body, you monster." Chapter 498. Shocking Change. It was a complete and utter shocking change. Just a moment ago, it was a heartwarming scene of a sister and brother reuniting. Then, it was 3 consecutive strikes. Blood splattered everywhere. Exclamations could be heard from below the stage. The old men who were watching the show stood up in shock. The sound of chairs overturning could be heard. The two generals behind Wang Shi, who were responsible for her safety, were dumbfounded. Even Sun Lang and the other two were shocked. No one expected that things would develop in such an explosive way. On the stage, the confrontation between the two continued. No, not two people, but one person and a monster. Wang Yin's eyes were bleeding. His eyeballs were pitch black, which made him look extremely terrifying. He sneered and said, "I can't believe you found me out. It seems you were suspicious when you sent me to deliver the letter to buy phone. You made arrangements to find out my secret, didn't you? Wang Ying, you are really amazing. You used your brother as a chess piece and bait to paralyze me. You managed to do it in such a disadvantageous situation. Amazing, but," he sneered, "do you think that Qi Guanyin will forgive you after doing such a thing? Do you think that if you do this, he will be touched and reconnect with you? You are wrong. He hates you. He really wants to kill you." Wang Shi's eyes flashed with sadness. Then she said softly, "I know." With a sudden twist of the dagger, Wang Ying let out a shout. Accompanied by a spurt of blood, Wang Yin's head was directly chopped off. It flew into the air, but his mouth was still cursing and sneering. Sun Lang and Hu Shouxin looked at the head at the same time. Old Hu whispered, this feeling. Sun Lang's expression was solemn. "It doesn't look like it," but his eyes swept across the crowd and then looked at the sky. Where is it hiding? The whole place was in chaos. Almost everyone was shocked by this sudden change. It almost turned into a riot. Wang Rulong stood below the stage and commanded to maintain order. He loudly ordered the other generals of Huqing to mobilize the army and be on high alert. Then, he jumped onto the stage and shouted, "Madam, what is going on? What are you doing?" Wang Yin's blood splattered on Wang Shi's clothes and face. The drops of blood gave off a strange and coquettish feeling. She held her dagger and turned her head to look at General Wang. Her expression seemed to be both smiling and crying. "Didn't you see? I killed my younger brother. He was my brother from the same mother, the only child of my Wang clan. I promised my mother that I would take good care of him. I raised him. I hoped that he would grow up. I hoped that he would continue the Wang clan's bloodline and bring glory to our clan. But I killed him. I killed him." She let out a mournful laugh. Her laughter was mixed with too many complicated emotions. Guilt, self-blame, madness, sadness, anger. However, there was no regret. She never regretted it because she had long been prepared. The woman smiled and waved her white sleeves, saying sternly, "Everyone be quiet. Please listen to this concubine." The woman in white with blood splattered all over, holding a dagger, and a headless corpse at her feet, quickly walked to the edge of the high platform. She looked at the confused crowd around her, waving her arms and shouting loudly. It was cold and windy at the high platform. The wind blew at the corners of her clothes and hair, but this woman stood upright in the wind. She was even as tall as a mountain. Her charm was heroic, not inferior to any man in the world. Her eyes shone with light. This was the most dazzling light in her life. She met everyone's gaze and said loudly, "This concubine is Wang Ying, the wife of Mingzhou's great general Qi Guanyin. I'm also under the Tensei province, a white chess piece of the Yi tribes, Zongjing 19 Dao. Empress Tensei used the earth as a chessboard. She recruited and trained 361 black and white chess pieces to arrange the world. I am one of them." She said it out loud. She said it out loud. This was such a terrible secret. In an instant, the smart people almost cursed out loud. Sometimes it was not a good thing to know too many secrets, not to mention this kind of trivial matter that was obviously related to the battle for the throne. Wang Ying's performance continued. "My husband has been in the military for his entire life. He has made outstanding military achievements. He fought for more than 10 years and became the great general of Mingzhou with his own abilities and military achievements. He is a famous general of the empire and a good husband. He never doubted me. He never knew that the person he slept with was a spy from Tensei province." Hu Shouxin's pupils shrank. he said in a low voice. She actually wants to erase the stain of Qi Guanyin relying on Tensei province. She actually... Sun Lang pursed his lips and quietly clenched his hands. No one knew what he was thinking. Wang Shi was still speaking loudly. As a white chess piece of the Tensei province's chess department, my mission is to hide by my husband's side as the wife of Mingzhou's great general. I collect important information for Empress, pass on intelligence, and plunder the wealth of Tensei province for Empress to complete her great cause. Lu Xiaoyan muttered, no, she's not trying to erase Qi Guanyin's stain. It can't be erased. She wants to take all the blame on herself. In any case, no matter what Wang Shi wanted to do, the three of them had become spectators. The stage belonged to this woman at this moment. She seemed to have thrown caution to the wind. She laughed heartily, and her voice was loud and clear. She raised her left hand and pointed at the people below the stage as she said loudly, "My lords, apart from most of the generals who want to save the great general, the other lords are willing to get involved in this mess because I have something on you. My lords, what do you think is the use of me collecting these things? Or rather, who ordered me to collect these things? What is that person trying to do?" The big shot's expressions became awkward at first, and then they became unsightly. Lu Zhou said in a hushed voice, "Unite against a common enemy. With the Colossus that is Tensei province as our common enemy, we'll form a community of interests with those with ulterior motives. In exchange for the disappearance of these blackmail materials, we'll get all the forces in Mingzhou to support Qi Guanyin. Otherwise," Hu Xiaoxin chimed in, "otherwise, if those accounts books fall into the hands of the northern faction, we'll still be able to make these people who only know how to protect themselves complain to the heavens. I'm sure she'll threaten us like this. Everyone is clearly her enemy, but everyone can be used by her as her weapon." Madame Wang did not stop talking. She said in rapid succession, "When the Black Armored Army entered Ming province 2 days ago, the conflict between the North faction and the Heavenly Policy Mansion was on the verge of breaking out. In order to regain some ground, the princess failed to win over my husband, so she ordered me to secretly kill him and frame the North faction. This led to chaos in Ming province and reversed the situation where the Black Armored Army was completely wiped out and the conspiracy was exposed. However, how could I do it?" She choked on her sobs. She sounded like she was about to cry, but she still enunciated every word clearly so that everyone could hear her clearly. "I'm afraid my reputation as a tigress and my husband's henpecked joke have spread far and wide in Mingzhou's officialdom. I was ordered by Empress to marry him. How could I be willing to do that? That's why I've always been against him. I've never been a good wife, but he's always silently tolerated me. She raised a hand and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. She looked at the people with different expressions on their faces and said resolutely, "He's been very good to me, and I've always let him down. If I listen to Empress' order to kill him, I'm afraid even Buddha won't let me go. I'm Bai Zi of Tensei province, and I'm also the daughter-in-law of the Qi family. Today, I'll confess my crimes in front of everyone and explain everything clearly." Wang Ying's gaze turned sharp immediately. "Please forgive me, everyone. I've invited you here with deception and coercion. In addition to confessing my crimes, I'll also show you a way out. You should know that Empress has been eyeing Mingzhou. Today, you've heard about the conspiracy of Tensei province. Even if you want to switch sides to Tensei province, you'll have to see if Empress can tolerate you. She also has some evidence that I've collected before. If you want to keep your wealth, I'm afraid there's only one way out. Now that the conflict between the North and Tensei province has been put on the table, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but you have no chance to remain neutral." After saying this, she turned her head. First, she glanced at Sun Lang, then turned her eyes to Hu Xiaoxin. "General, who is my husband's close friend. He's been informed in advance that the Tensei province is going to attack him. In order to protect him, he's temporarily under house arrest. Now, the misunderstanding is about to be resolved. From now on, my husband will advance and retreat together with the North. Please think carefully about what you want to do. It was already enough to say this much. The next step would depend on Sun Lang and the other's abilities. Hu Shouxin's expression was complicated. Madame Wang Shi just smiled. Her face was filled with relief and sadness. She looked at the people below. Everyone was shocked, confused, and angry. Those who were deceived by her, used by her, and coerced by her were all enemies. Everyone was the enemy. These people were the enemy. Her husband's subordinates were the enemy. Even her husband was the enemy. As for me, I've done too many things that I shouldn't have done. I'm an unqualified wife and a vicious woman. I betrayed my husband, offended you, and even killed innocent people. My crimes are unforgivable. Wang Shi said calmly. Today, I'll give you an explanation. Sun Lang's eyes suddenly moved. His gaze was already fixed on the dagger in Wang Shi's hand. At such a short distance, even if Wang Shi wanted to directly break her meridians, she wouldn't have any chance. But he was wrong again. Wang Shi's body arched. With a cry, she spat out a mouthful of black blood and slowly sat on the ground. Wang Rulong shouted, "Madam!" Sun Lang came in front of her in an instant. He wanted to reach out to help her, but his face showed annoyance. He looked at her and said in a complicated tone, "You took the poison in advance. Empress sent someone to specially prepare it for my husband." Wang Shi smiled faintly. "It's just right to use it on me." Lu Shoyan had already rushed forward and reached out to hold the woman's wrist. A moment later, he was shocked. "Don't bother, Lord Lu." Wang Shi turned her head and spat out another mouthful of black blood. Her hair was a little messy and her face became weak. However, her eyes were incomparably bright. She looked very satisfied and relieved. She smiled and said, "Empress prepared the poison for my husband. How can it be cured?" Hu Shouxin's hands were trembling. He was almost speechless. He tossed and turned and said, Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to do this? Why didn't you tell us earlier? Why didn't you tell us?" Hearing this, Wang Shi raised her head and a trace of pride appeared on her face. "Because I can do it myself. Because this matter can only be done by me." Old Hu sighed and said, "Then you don't have to sacrifice your life. If General Qi knows, my words today are not flawless. If someone thinks carefully, they will find flaws. Only my death can determine the nature of this matter. As the wife of Mingzhou's great general, I have to die in front of everyone so that they can no longer investigate this matter. In order to protect my husband, this is the only way." Wang Shi said softly, "I have long been aware of this. Since I came to this stage today, I have no intention of leaving alive." Sun Lang looked at Wang Shi expressionlessly from the beginning. Suddenly, he said, "Wait." He turned and was about to leave. Wang Shi seemed to realize what he was going to do. A trace of panic appeared on her face. She struggled and said, "Wait. You can't go. You should go after that blazing angel now. Empress's orders have failed miserably. It doesn't dare to go back. It must be thinking of another way. A few days ago, I managed to get some information from it. It's going to—" "Shut up," Sun Lang said indifferently without even turning his head. "I don't need you to tell me what to do." He pointed at Wang Rulong. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and mobilize the troops. Increase the defenses and guard against attacks from the air and underground. If this woman is killed by that blazing angel, you know the consequences." Wang Rulong was slightly taken aback. He hastily leaped off the stage and began to issue orders. Sun Lang looked at Lu Shoyan. "It's good that you have medical skills. Old Hu will be in charge of protecting you, and you'll be in charge of keeping her alive. I want her alive. At the very least, she has to stay alive until I return. If you can do that, someone will be forever grateful to you." Lu Zhou said solemnly, "There's no need for someone to be grateful. This is a matter of justice. How can I not save such an extraordinary woman?" "Don't worry, young master." Sun Lang nodded slightly. Then the sound of the wind stopped. Then, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, a dazzling light shot into the skies. A sword saint rode on his sword Qi and traveled through the North Sea in the morning and Kangwu in the evening. In Marquis Jing'an's mansion, inside the courtyard where Qi Guanyin was placed under house arrest, Zhang Luo was still trying to persuade Qi Guanyin anxiously. In just a blink of an eye, a sword light whistled down. The light faded away. Sun Lang walked over expressionlessly and landed a punch on Qi Guanyin's face, sending him flying far away. Then, he moved forward and grabbed Qi Guanyin's collar. Luo was shocked at first. Then, he said happily, "Sun Lang, hurry up and persuade him. He wants to commit suicide." When Sun Lang heard this, he was so angry that he laughed. He punched Qi Guanyin again. Even a clay bodhisattva would have a temper, let alone Qi Guanyin. Qi Guanyin reached out to block Sun Lang and said angrily, "What are you doing?" Sun Lang's son Ran said, "Come with me." Qi Guanyin said sternly, "I'm not going." "Is that so?" Sun Lang said coldly, "Then let her die alone." When Qi Guanyin heard this, his pupils contracted. He turned his hand and grabbed Sun Lang's wrist, saying loudly, "What did you say?" Sun Lang said indifferently, "You two are planning to do the same thing. Unfortunately, she's faster than you." For a moment, Qi Guanyin's mind was greatly shaken. He didn't know what he was feeling right now. He only felt that the world was rumbling loudly, as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was sinking. "Where?" Qi Guanyin roared. "I said where." Sun Lang silently pointed in a direction and undid the shackles on Qi Guanyin's body. Qi Guanyin didn't say anything and rushed madly in that direction. Luo didn't know what had happened at all. He had a dumbfounded expression. "Hey." Then Sun Lang suddenly hugged her. "WH, what are you doing?" "I'm still wearing the power armor." Luo mumbled at first. Suddenly, she saw Sun Lang's body trembling slightly. Her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but soften her voice and said softly, "What's wrong?" "That idiot," Sun Lang said in a low voice. "How can there be such an idiot in this world? How can there be such an idiot? For someone else that he could have just ignored, he racked his brains, schemed, and even sacrificed his own life. For him, he didn't even want his own life. This idiot, Luo, seemed to have guessed what had happened. But soon, she realized something else. Sun Lang, who was hugging her, was trembling. She could feel the sadness in this person's heart. He was talking about Qi Guanyin and his wife, but Sun Lang was so sad. He had been angry, happy, cold-blooded, lazy, but rarely sad. It was like he was telling his own story, his own sadness. It was like there was also a person who didn't care about the cost, didn't ask for anything in return, wasn't afraid of sacrifice, and was willing to die for his future and hope. Luo reached out and patted Sun Lang's back gently. He said softly, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Chapter 499. He sprinted with all his strength. He felt as if his entire body was being burned by fire. His heart was filled with fear, confusion, and guessing. He did not know what had happened. Sun Lang's words were not enough to explain the entire situation. But he did realize that there was a possibility that, for him, was even crueler than the betrayal of his wife. Qi Guanyin gritted his teeth, madly activating his internal energy. He unearthed all the potential in his body, madly sprinting towards the camp of the army. He had already given up on thinking. He only wanted to be faster, to use his own eyes to see the true answer. He wanted to be faster, just a little faster. Scenes of the past appeared in his mind. That was their first meeting. Their love when they were young was incomparably passionate. He felt that this was a good marriage given by the heavens. He swore that he would grow old together with her, that he would achieve great things, that he would be famous, that he would share all his glory with her. He wanted to dig out his heart and give it to her. But after entering the army, his overly loyal personality caused him to run into walls everywhere. He was ostracized by his colleagues, suppressed by his superiors, and even looked down upon by his subordinates. The achievements he had dreamed of when he was young were a joke in front of the cold reality. He had always been mediocre and in dire straits. But his young wife accompanied him without any complaints. No matter if it was poverty or hardship, she did not have any complaints. She lived in a simple house, did not have any new clothes for a long time, and left the best things to him. To have such a wife was the fortune of a man, but to let his wife live such a life was also the shame of a man's life. The setbacks in reality and the hardships his wife faced made him doubt himself even more. He doubted whether his father's teachings were correct. He doubted whether he should continue like this. Because in the army, those greedy, incompetent, and narrow-minded, despicable people were in high positions and lived rich lives. They clearly did not have any abilities. What he had learned was clearly 100 times better than theirs. But these idiots held great power in their hands and wantonly abused it for their own benefit. Why was it like this? I'm clearly stronger than them. If I am a general, I can win battles and allow more soldiers to live. Why can't it be me? Such thoughts licked his soul and tortured his conscience. Ideals would always be defeated by reality, as long as one's heart was concerned. Until he could no longer bear all of this and was about to take that step, by a very coincidental opportunity, his wife accidentally met a noble. That nobleman was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. She had a life that was more fortunate and easier than most people in this world. A single word from her could change a person's fate. Indeed, his fate had changed because of this. The nobleman only asked a question, and the whole world changed. Overnight, the ostracized colleagues suddenly became enthusiastic and sincere, and the bosses who had been making things difficult for them became discerning. They were still the same people, but the eagerness and fawning in their eyes were nauseating. This was the wonderful taste of power. It could turn arrogant people into servile dogs in an instant. He was finally able to go to the battlefield and turn all the grievances and hardships he had suffered into violent fury that he vented on the battlefield. Then, he naturally made a great contribution and maintained an excellent performance. Soon, he was promoted and transferred. Everything was like a dream, but he soon woke up from the dream, because after the promotion and transfer, the new boss wasn't greeted by the nobleman. The new colleagues didn't know his background, and Qi Guanyin was still the old Qi Guanyin who didn't know what was good for him. So, the ostracizing and making things difficult for him were repeated. It was as if the world was full of people who didn't like him. Everything fell into a stalemate and quagmire again, just like before. He naturally thought of the good times before that went smoothly and thought of the person who changed everything. Humans were very fragile and easily swayed creatures. For example, some good things, as long as there was the first time, there would definitely be a second time. But the nobleman couldn't always stand up for you. She didn't have this obligation. That night, looking at his wife's familiar but somewhat haggard sleeping face, he clenched his teeth. Then he wailed in front of his father's grave for a whole day. It wasn't that his son didn't want to be a person with a straight back. It was that this world didn't treat his son as a person. The consequence of sticking to one's ideals and ambitions and being an upright person was silence and mediocrity. He was a soldier. In the face of the sky demon, the enemy, he wanted to bathe in blood and fight to protect the country and its people. But the funny thing was, if he didn't try to curry favor and bend the knee, he wouldn't even have the chance to go to the battlefield and kill the enemy. So, in order to not burden his wife and to be able to realize his ideals, he slowly lowered his head to reality. If he could only survive by bending the knee, then he would choose a good master. So, it was actually like this. Qi Guanyin was still the same Qi Guanyin. During this period of time, he wasn't enlightened by a deity to teach him the ultimate art of war, nor was he taught invincible martial arts by an otherworldly expert. His martial arts and military strategy were still the same. But with the protection of Tensei Province, the once down-and-out little lieutenant actually continued to make meritorious contributions. In the end, he became one of the military officials of the border and was given the title of Great General in Ming Province. The only difference between a lieutenant and a great general was the protection of Tensei Province. That was all. Originally, this was fine. Qi Guanyin had already accepted his fate. On one hand, he was wallowing in the mire with the secular world, while on the other hand, he was desperately trying to realize his ideals. The great General Qi, who was good with money and power, and the great General Qi, who was strict with the army, didn't have any conflicts. This was fine. If he wanted to achieve something, compromise was necessary. That was what he thought, until he realized this master of Tensei province didn't seem to be as good as he thought. What if all of this was fake? The so-called betrothal before they were born was just a carefully arranged lie. His wife coming to him was also a premeditated scheme. Love, marriage, mutual respect, they were all following orders. Because he had been targeted long ago, even the inexplicable exclusion and targeting in the army seemed to be manipulated in the dark. The wife accidentally got to know a nobleman, and when they were chatting and complaining, she talked about the injustice her husband had encountered. So the nobleman asked about it, and the matter was quickly resolved. This beautiful fantasy-like story unfolding was also a prefabricated scam. All of this was targeted at Qi Guanyin. He didn't even know why the Heavenly Policy Palace had their eyes on him. He was just the son of a low-ranking military officer, a brat who didn't know anything. Why did the Heavenly Policy Palace take a liking to him so early on and set up such a trap? He didn't know. He really didn't know. The only thing he knew was that his wife, who he loved deeply, who once swore to protect him for the rest of his life, had ulterior motives. When he finally discovered the truth, he was on the verge of breaking down. His efforts and struggles over the years were simply a joke. His life had been wantonly manipulated. He had betrayed his father's teachings and violated his own beliefs. In exchange, he had actually received such an ending. He almost went crazy and even wanted to cut that bitch into pieces. But when he was about to tell his wife everything, he saw in Air's familiar eyes and smile. He remembered the first time they met, the wedding night, the years of support, and the love and sacrifice of his wife during that difficult time. He found that he still loved his wife deeply, even after he found out the secret. He didn't know why, but he gave up on telling his wife everything and chose to play dumb. The person sleeping next to him was a spy with ulterior motives. All of her actions were suspicious, but he chose to ignore them. He was twice as good to her and treated everything she said as if it was the law of heaven. There was no more qualified husband than him. He was simply the model of a model. He didn't know why he chose to do so. Was it because of his unforgettable love, or was it because of his self-abandonment and self-abuse? He couldn't tell. He even imagined that his wife would suddenly show her true colors, ignore the love between them for more than 10 years, and cruelly take his life. Then his whole body would tremble. But if it was love, if it was too strong, it could easily turn into hatred under extreme circumstances. That night, under the lead of Sun Lang, he followed his wife and Seraph's secret plan. When he heard those vicious plans, all of his patience and fury finally broke out. That earth-shattering halberd contained blazing anger. If it wasn't for Sun Lang stopping him, he would have torn his wife's body into pieces. That was an unforgettable hatred. He wanted to kill her. It was all because of her that he betrayed his father's teachings and got a hopeless love. His life was controlled by Tensei province and mixed with the filthy world. He lived like a dog. It was all because of her. His hatred was further fermenting, intertwining with his love. When he heard that his wife was entangled with an army and that the poisonous vines that had been fermenting for years finally bore terrible fruit, he planned such a plan. Die. Just die. Do what you want to do. Die. Since she wants me to die, then I'll die. I'll take all the blame and pull her out from the shadows of Tensei province. I'll let her know that I've already seen through the truth and that I've already sacrificed myself for her. I know her identity, but I'm still willing to fulfill my promise and love her for the rest of my life, so she'll regret. She'll be unwilling. She'll feel guilty. She'll be in pain. She'll live in regret and despair for the rest of her life. She'll never see me, and she'll always have to beg for my forgiveness. It was already twisted. It was already crazy. Mingzhou's General Qi Guanyin. He was obviously peerless, but his life was controlled by schemers and manipulated by traitors. He was incomparably conflicted, incomparably tangled, in pain and exhaustion without end. Such a person was already a calm madman. Until just now, Sun Lang's words were like a ray of sunlight breaking through layers of dark clouds, shining on the already twisted soul hidden under his heroic and calm appearance. How warm, how blazing. But he didn't have time to feel the long-lost warmth. He felt great panic. Sun Lang told him vetting air was doing the same thing. Although it was just a sentence, although he didn't know the cause and effect, he had already guessed what had happened. Because that was his wife, and he was the person who knew her the best in the world. She could also do such a thing. She actually did it. When did she start planning to do it? What am I doing? How ridiculous. How childish. All the pretending to be magnanimous, all the gentleness, all the silent protection, all the twisted love, now seemed so absurd. Qi Guanyin was running desperately. His heart was roaring fiercely. Before this, he was already a calm and twisted madman. But now, in his soul, the blazing and the cold blended, the gentle and the twisted intertwined. For many years, he had never felt like today. His feelings were so complicated, sweet and painful, expectant and panicked, shocked and enlightened, happy and sad. However, all these complicated emotions disappeared in the end. All that was left was a revived soul, roaring and roaring under the passion of love and passion. He had already rushed to the gate of the camp. The guards in front of the gate subconsciously stopped him because they recognized the general. Qi Guanyin roared angrily, "Get out of the way!" Tossing aside the strict military law he had set, he blasted open the horse barricade, knocked the guards to the side, and madly rushed in, like an enraged lion. He rushed to the drill ground, roaring, and ordered the crowd to disperse. Everyone hurriedly retreated, looking at the famous general of the Ming prefecture with complicated expressions. Qi Guanyin rushed to the high platform and saw the person who had been in his dreams. She sat on the ground powerlessly, her face pale, and her body splashed with blood. Lu Shoyin was sitting behind her. His expression was grim as he channeled his true qi into her. Qi Guanyin was overjoyed. He shouted, "Ing!" Lu Shoyin stopped him. Qi Guanyin turned around abruptly. His eyes were so fierce that he looked like he wanted to eat someone. Old Hu said gloomily, "Don't be rash. She's poisoned." "You." Qi Guanyin's expression changed immediately. He looked at Lu Shoyin and fell to his knees. He cowed out, "Lord Lu, please save my life. I'll never forget your kindness in my life." When Lu Zhou heard this, a bitter smile appeared on his face. He could not bear to tell them the truth. However, Wang Ying slowly opened her eyes. She looked at her husband and smiled weakly. "Idiot, there's no cure." Qi Guanyin looked up abruptly. He did not get up. He walked over on his knees and reached out with a trembling hand to caress his wife's face. For a moment, tears streamed down his face. He was at a loss for words. Wang Shi's eyes were slightly dazed. She looked at her husband and said softly, "I'm sorry. I've never said sorry to you in my life. I've ruined your life. If it weren't for me, if it weren't for the arrangements in Tensei province, you would have had a chance to stand out in the Tianyuan war no matter how bad your temper is. I'm the one who ruined you. I'm the one who made you unlike yourself." Qi Guanyin shook his head and said with tears streaming down his face, "No, it's not like that. I see." Wang Shi said softly, "So, you're right to hate me. It's normal for you to want to kill me." However, that night, when I saw the look in your eyes and how you stabbed me with your halberd, although I knew I deserved it, my heart felt like it was about to split open. I'm a woman, and I hold grudges. I wanted to get back at you. That's why I punished you." She reached out and held her husband's hand. A sly smile appeared on her face as she said, "I'm very proud of myself now. You'll never forget me in this lifetime. You'll remember me for the rest of your life. You're not allowed to die. You'll have to live the rest of my life." Qi Guanyin gritted his teeth and nodded forcefully. "As for how I've let you down, I'm truly sorry. When I received the order, I didn't know what kind of person you were. I had to complete the mission, and I had no choice." Wang Shi sighed softly. "I know it's useless to say this, but please don't blame me, all right? I'm about to die. I should have found a better way for you to start over, but I'm just a weak woman. My abilities are limited. I can only do this much. I finally did something." Qi Guanyin murmured, "I don't blame you. Please don't die. I've forgiven you. Can you forgive me too? Let's leave this country immediately. Let's go far away, to a place where no one knows us." Wang Shi's face was filled with sadness. No, she couldn't do it anymore. She recalled that night. After working together with Blazing Angel to kill Uncle Chong, she leaned on the old butler's corpse and cried out loud. She felt an unforgettable sadness, because all of her delusions and fantasies were cut off at that moment. Because from that moment on, there was no turning back. She shook her head and stared deeply at her husband, as if she wanted to remember his appearance forever. She said softly, "You're free. Tensei Province won't dare to disturb you anymore. You can cooperate with the Northern faction, or you can leave this country. You could do whatever you want. As for Tensei Province, I've helped you vent your anger. Emperor's plan to cause chaos in Mingzhou has failed, and everything has benefited the Northern faction. Moreover, this matter has been exposed, enough to make her more passive. She must be in a terrible fix right now. Who told her to plot against you? I'm your wife. You're soft-hearted and don't want to do certain things, so I'll help you vent your anger. I've deceived everyone. You, the Northern faction, Tensei Province, and Master." Wang Shi reached out her trembling hand and stroked her husband's cheek. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but there was still a smile on her face. Suddenly, she smiled sweetly, like 100 flowers blooming. "Husband, how's my ability to deceive people?" An extremely forced smile slowly appeared on Qi Guanyan's face. He reached out and hugged his wife, taking her into his arms. Lu Shouyin sighed and withdrew his hands, stopping his cultivation. His arms were trembling, and his heart was thumping wildly. An indescribable emotion was tearing at Qi Guanyan's soul, making him feel lost, angry, sad, desperate, and regretful. It was as if he had fought a great battle. The wife in his arms was the woman who betrayed him, but also the woman who loved him deeply. From a beginning to the end, she had always done what she thought was right. She never looked back, never gave up, never dreamed of forgiveness, and never asked for understanding. Step by step, with determination that bordered on cold-bloodedness, she gambled everything in her life, and finally turned it into the brilliant light of today, dispelling the heavy haze in his life. She had always been like this, strong, dictatorial, and independent, regardless of what others felt. She had always been like this, fierce, shrewish, and stubborn. Once she had chosen a path, she would walk it to the end. They had been husband and wife for more than 10 years. She had always been aggressive, and he had always retreated step by step. In the end, it was really hard to tell who loved whom more. But the only thing that could be confirmed was that the soldier of the empire named Qi Guanyan had been successful and famous. He had become a general of a province, and his prestige had spread far and wide. Although he was famous throughout the world, in this lifetime, he had been completely suppressed by a little woman. This was a famous anecdote in the officialdom. He had been tamed, he had been strictly controlled, he had been deceived into running around in circles. Qi Guanyan said in a low voice, "Yes, your ability to deceive people has always been very good. I have been deceived by you all my life. I have always been kept in the dark by you. After being husband and wife for more than 10 years, I actually didn't know what you were thinking." He hugged his wife tightly, his chin resting on her forehead, just like newlyweds on their wedding night. In order to soothe the shyness in each other's hearts, he held his shy and bright wife in his arms, gently rocking and whispering sweet nothings to her. He would never know what his wife was thinking back then. Just like now, he would never know what his wife was thinking. Qi Guanyin closed his eyes, hugged his wife, and said softly, "So, Ing-Er, lie to me one more time. Suddenly open your eyes, reach out your hand, tap my forehead, and say with a smile, 'Idiot, you have been fooled again.' Just like this. Lie to me one more time, okay? Lie to me one more time, even if it's just one more time. Please, please." Chapter 500. 3 days later, Lady Wang was buried. It was a grand funeral, and the entire army was dressed in mourning. There was an endless stream of people who came to offer their condolences. Most of them were people who had experienced the events of that day. Although this woman had done many things when she was alive, even using blackmail to threaten everyone, these important figures suddenly realized that they no longer hated her as they gazed at her grave. Perhaps it was because, with her death, the fatal secret had also vanished into thin air, so no one had suffered any losses. Perhaps it was because there was something in this woman's soul that they did not have. No matter what, even if many years had passed, they would still remember that there was once a shrewish and tyrannical woman who shocked Ming province with the art of controlling her husband and the lion's roar from Hedong. She managed to tame a great general. They would remember that there was such a woman who had sacrificed everything for her husband. That figure standing on the high platform, that blood-stained white robe, that intimidating demeanor, they would never forget it. In the evening, the crowd gradually dispersed. Loyal soldiers stood guard at the foot of the mountain, leaving only Qi Guanyin in mourning clothes, kneeling alone in front of the grave. Sun Lang slowly made his way over, and then a look of surprise appeared on his face. There were two new graves in front of Qi Guanyin. On one tombstone was written simply, "Beloved wife Wang Ying's grave, erected by the foolish Qi Guanyin." On the other tombstone was written, "Clan Uncle Qi Chong's grave, erected by the unfilial nephew Qi Guanyin." Qi Chong, Sun Lang's expression changed slightly. "This is that steward." Qi Guanyin nodded. His voice was rather hoarse. Yes. In these 3 days, Qi Guanyin was muddle-headed. Like a walking corpse, he watched over his wife's coffin and dealt with her funeral matters. He paid no attention to anything else and directly entrusted the military affairs of Mingzhou to Hu Shouxin. The generals under his direct command were loyal and devoted. After Sun Lang and Old, who made a few promises, they completely carried out the general's orders. They knew Qi Guanyin's state and understood the current situation. Although they were loyal, they still had to make plans for themselves. There was nothing better than having the general's orders. Although Old, who was a valiant general in the army and had been on the battlefield for a long time, he did not have the experience of managing an entire province's army. Fortunately, with Liu Shouyin's help and the cooperation of the civil and military officials, he was able to stabilize the situation. Right now, they were busy unifying their forces and the hearts of the people. Marquis Jinggan Fu was also taking the chance to expand their influence, and Embroidery Hall was also unwilling to fall behind. The current great situation allowed him to see an opportunity to collude with officials and merchants. Everyone was busy. Old Hu and Liu Zhou were busy stabilizing the province while releasing smoke bombs to the imperial capital. 3 days had passed. Old Hu was on high alert, as if he was facing a great enemy. However, there was no movement from the Tensei province. Perhaps it was because they had sealed off the news, or perhaps the Tensei province was also waiting. Rumors were, in the end, just rumors. Because Qi Guanyin had not said anything, the matter had not been settled. The situation was getting more and more delicate, and the silence of the court was getting more and more awkward. The situation was like a tightly drawn bow, and someone was still pulling it. No one knew what would happen in the next moment. The key person in all of this, Qi Guanyin, was silently guarding his wife. He was already indifferent to the matters outside. Sun Lang saw that in just a few days, the great general's hair had turned white. He looked haggard as though he had aged 10 years overnight. As he looked at Uncle Chong's tombstone, Sun Lang seemed to have realized something. He sighed softly and asked, "Did your wife kill him?" A sorrowful expression appeared on Qi Guanyin's face. He sighed and shook his head. He looked at Uncle Chong's tombstone and said softly, "No, Uncle Chong actually committed suicide." Sun Lang was stunned. "What? Why?" The great general produced 2 envelopes from his pocket and said softly, "When I left that day, no one dared to tell me about Uncle Chong. It was only when I returned home that I could no longer hide it. They said Uncle Chong died in the hands of the Blazing Angel. At that time, Madame ordered people to collect Uncle Chong's body and store his coffin in an ice cellar. His body didn't rot. I examined Uncle Chong's body and saw a wound on his chest from short sword." Hearing this, Sun Lang understood the truth. He sighed silently. Qi Guanyin said woodenly, "Then, a servant that Uncle Chong took care of came to me and gave me these 2 letters. He said Uncle Chong told him to give them to me when I returned. Uncle Chong's last words were written on them. They explained the ins and outs of the matter and his apology. Sun Lang said indifferently, "His apology." "Yes, his apology," Qi Guanyin said calmly. "Do you still remember the night when we discovered and the Blazing Angel's secret plan, and you wanted to take me to Mingzhou? We went back to the general's residence, and Uncle Chong came to welcome us. He had already realized what had happened. I also knew that Inga would come back to get the things, so I told Uncle Chong not to ask too much when he saw Madame. Don't make things difficult for her, and let her do as she pleases." Sun Lang said, "But he didn't." "Yes. Uncle Chong watched me grow up and treated me like his own son. How could he turn a blind eye to such a thing?" Qi Guanyin said sadly. He was very familiar with the general's residence and knew what Inger was looking for when she returned. So he was waiting there early and saw Inger. Inger went to get the account book. She tricked the Blazing Angel into believing her plan. She did get the account book, but she also left something else in it. The general said slowly, "The other account book didn't record the dark material between me and the officials of Mingzhou, but the records of her communication with the people of Tensei Province. That was physical evidence used to prove what she said that day. She left that thing there and hinted at this in her conversation with Uncle Chong. After she and the Blazing Angel left, Uncle Chong found these things in the ruins of the house that was deliberately destroyed." Qi Guanyin took a deep breath and said with a trembling voice, he saw Er's plan, and he quickly believed it because the things Inger left behind were solid evidence. It was like the sharpest dagger was handed to him personally. If he wanted, he could expose everything at any time. Sun Lang said calmly, "But he didn't tell you this." "Yes." He realized that Inger was going to sacrifice herself and end everything. Inger was my wife, his mistress, and his mistress. When he realized that his mistress was going to sacrifice herself, he should have told me immediately. But he didn't because he loved me more than anything. He realized that this was a perfect opportunity for me to erase my nightmarish past and get a new life. But he didn't report it, which meant that he was an accomplice who watched his mistress die. He wanted me to be sacrificed again, but this meant that he had to sacrifice Inger. Between my future and Er's life, he chose the former. He didn't regret it, but he wanted to give me an explanation. Qi Guanyin said softly, "So he paid a life for a life." Inger wanted to take advantage of the fact that I was under house arrest to return to the mansion as the general's wife. She wanted to gather the army and carry out her plan. This plan was perfect enough to fool the Blazing Angel, but there was a fatal flaw. Uncle Chong had seen her and the Blazing Angel before. Uncle Chong was the old butler of the general's mansion, so he had to be killed to make everything go smoothly. Inger knew this. She wanted to save me, so she was willing to sacrifice everyone's life. Uncle Chong's life, the King's Seal's life, and her own life were no exceptions. Uncle Chong also knew this. When he heard that I was under house arrest in Mingzhou, he realized that something was about to happen. This was a perfect opportunity, and Inger wouldn't let it go. Qi Guanyin looked at the two tombstones in front of him. His eyes blurred as he said, "That night, Inger and the Blazing Angel entered the study of the general's mansion through a secret passage in the outer city. Uncle Chong was already waiting there. No one knows what happened that night, and what Uncle Chong said to Inger in the end. But I believe that Uncle Chong and Inger must have had a final conversation, and Uncle Chong finally made the decision to sacrifice himself. Otherwise, with his skills, even if he couldn't defeat the Blazing Angel, he wouldn't have been killed so quietly. He had many chances to warn the others." Sun Lang said. Then everything began. Killing Uncle Chong was the best way to prove his loyalty. Because the Blazing Angel also knew Uncle Chong's identity, it finally chose to trust your wife completely and allowed her to gather the generals as the general's wife. It felt that if Uncle Chong was killed, your wife's hands would be stained with blood, and she would never be able to return to the past with you. And this was also the beginning of the Blazing Angel's failure. The general said, Inger returned to the general's mansion as the general's wife and led the army. This meant that the soldiers had completely cut off her connection with the Blazing Angel. Inger also took the opportunity to hint to Wang Rulong to increase the air defenses and patrols to ensure her safety. This also made it impossible for the Blazing Angel to contact her. She was able to break free from the Blazing Angel's surveillance and truly begin her plans and arrangements. Sun Lang was silent for a moment, then said softly, "The last few days of leading the army was the most important time for your wife to carry out her plans. Before this, she had always been monitored and guarded against by the Blazing Angel. The only contact she had with Uncle Chong was due to her scheming, let alone anything else." He revealed a look of reminiscence and said, "There are some things that can only be understood after the fact. Do you still remember that night? We bumped into their plans. I've always felt that something was very wrong. Only now do I realize that the conversation between the two of them was too deliberate. It was almost like a stage play. The Blazing Angel's words were filled with hints and guidance, leading your wife to speak of those plans. It probably already realized that we were eavesdropping. And when you swung that halberd with its speed, it actually didn't try to save you. When you connect it to the matter of the royal seal, everything is probably very clear." Sun Lang said indifferently, "The mission of this Blazing Angel was not to kill you, but to kill both of you. Killing your wife would not only silence you, but also increase the shock. After all, the effect of the general and his wife dying together would be much more explosive than your own death. In other words, it has probably been using your wife all this time, making the two of you fight each other, and then finally killing your wife. It has always been up to no good." Sun Lang said slowly, "In other words, her husband hates her, her brother definitely doesn't understand her, and her so-called allies are also scheming against her. Bright Province is so big, and she is alone and helpless. She can only fight alone. That must be very difficult." He was silent for a moment before he said softly, "A weak woman is always thinking about how to save her husband, and she has to throw out one vicious scheme after another to attract the Blazing Angel's interest and temporarily delay its killing intent, making it feel that she is still useful. Then, in the process of feigning civility with the Blazing Angel, she pushed forward the implementation of the plan with great difficulty, not letting go of any opportunity. In the end, in such a disadvantageous situation, she accomplished such an earth-shattering thing." Sun Lang closed his eyes and took a deep breath, as if he was suppressing a certain emotion in his heart. He walked forward and bowed deeply at the two tombstones. "I can't tell right from wrong, and I have indifferent morals. My definition of good, evil, and good is very strange. I have always thought that most people in this world are bastards, and it doesn't matter if they all die. But it is undeniable that there are always a few fools in this world, and they sometimes make me feel that it is a bit of a pity if the world is destroyed just like that. I admire those who are willing to sacrifice themselves for others, even if they are fools." Sun Lang sighed. "They are really fools. Yes, they are very fools." Chi Guanyin stretched out his hand and stroked the cold stone. He said bitterly, "They're always like this. They don't care about my feelings and do things with their own wishful thinking. But I can't hate them because they did it for my good. They sacrificed for me, but they left me here alone." Sun Lang didn't say anything. At this point, thousands of words had lost all meaning. Chi Guanyin knelt silently and touched the tombstone in front of him. He suddenly laughed. "Marshal, I told you before that there are some things that can surpass hatred. Do you believe me now?" Sun Lang said quietly, "It has always been like this. Do you know, when I look back on my life, when I received the whistle from my father when I was young, I decided not to inherit my father's official position and wanted to join the army to participate in the war. I carried my luggage and stepped into the noisy military camp. Those seemingly blurry and unremarkable days in my memories were actually the violent changes in my life and fate." He looked at the tombstone in front of him and smiled foolishly. "And the most beautiful day of my life was that day in the south of Willow River, when I saw the breeze blow her veil. That was the first time I met her. At that time, I was young and full of vigor and wanted to be the best general in the world. I thought that day was just another ordinary day." Sun Lang listened calmly. After a long time, he said slowly, "Chi Guanyin." The general said calmly, "Yes." Sun Lang looked at the man in front of him and didn't want to speak for a moment. But in the end, he said, "Do you want to come to my place?" Qi Guanyin laughed when he heard this. He looked at the tombstones of his two family members, and his laughter gradually became choked with sobs. The dream of being the best general in the world, of being a hero who achieved meritorious deeds on the battlefield and brought glory to his family, had been exchanged for his path being distorted, his will being obliterated, his fate being played with, and he had lost the two most important people in his life. Empress also once said this to me, but in the end, he didn't get what he wanted. He had paid an unbearable price. His dream had been shattered. He was no longer a youth. After compromising, it was actually destruction. The general turned his head to look at Sun Lang. Tears had already blurred his vision. The great general of the world was sobbing like a child. He said in a trembling voice, "Then, Marshal, compared to her, are you a good and capable person?" Sun Lang was silent for a long time. He said in a low voice, "Sorry." He didn't say anything else. He turned around and silently left. "I'm not." Chapter 501. Marquis Jinggan Fu. Inluo sighed softly, her expression a bit sorrowful. She also knew the entire story. As a young girl, she was always filled with sympathy and emotion towards love that was willing to sacrifice itself without regard for personal safety. After hearing the entire story, this fellow actually wiped away her tears for several days. Now, when she mentioned Qi Guanyin and Wang Shi, the rims of her eyes were still red. She sighed and said, "In the end, Qi Guanyin still rejected you." Sun Lang smiled proudly. "No, it wasn't him who rejected me. It was me who rejected him. The great cause of rebellion doesn't believe in tears. This guy's already completely useless. What's the point of keeping him around?" Zhang Yinluo gazed at Sun Lang, the corners of her lips curling into a smile. "Then what about Mingzhou?" Sun Lang raised a finger and smiled proudly. "Mingzhou is very stable. Qi Guanyin has already stepped down and ordered his henchmen to listen to old Hu. Everyone knows what happened that day, and anyone with a discerning eye can see that Qi Guanyin's backer is about to fall. They're not idiots, so why would they just stand there and do nothing?" He jumped up and sat on the table. He turned around to look at Yinluo and proudly said, "Humph, humph, humph, humph. We have Qi Guanyin's tacit support, Lu Shoyan's full cooperation, the banner and halo of a northern faction, and the support of Marquis Jinggan Fu and your family. We can completely grasp the power of Ming Zhou step by step and turn the entire province into our property." Humph, 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 humph. Obviously, he raised his right hand and loudly announced, "Qi Guanyin, this guy has already lost all of his value and usefulness. Without that butcher Qi, I can still eat hairy pigs." Yinluo had a faint smile on her face as she nodded repeatedly. Yes, you're so amazing. Then what's next? What are you going to do with General Qi, who has lost all of his value?" Sun Lang waved his hand and said, "Have him scram. He can go wherever he wants." Damn, just looking at him makes me annoyed. He's clearly this kind of trash, but he is such a good wife who has no complaints and is willing to do anything for her husband. Even her last love was so unrestrained and passionate. Hearing this, Yinluo saw that Sun Lang kept glancing at her from the corner of his eyes, almost writing, "I'm hinting, do you want to say something?" on his face. Thus, the girl pouted slightly, then held her cheeks with both hands and pretended to be innocent. "I feel that General Qi is even more infatuated than his wife. Even after being deceived like this, he still loves her deeply without any complaints. It's been more than 10 years, and he's never been fickle, never messed around, and never flirted with other women." Sun Lang immediately said affectionately, "Yinluo, don't worry. I will definitely be the perfect husband that the heroines in those universal love novels hope for. In other words, no matter how many women I have in the future, I will definitely always have you in my heart." Yinluo believed that in terms of thickness and shamelessness, the difference between her and Sun Lang was even greater than the difference in their martial arts. Obviously, in terms of shamelessness, she would never be able to win against Sun Lang. But now, When Sun Lang talked about General Qi and his wife, he no longer felt sad, or rather, sadness would no longer show on his face. Looking at Sun Lang's despicable appearance now, although Yin Luo wanted to hit him, she actually heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Sun Lang's appearance that day really gave her a fright. She had never seen Sun Lang reveal such a weak and sorrowful expression. He must be hiding something extremely sad in his heart. But she didn't know where to start asking. She didn't even know if she should ask. She had seen Sun Lang's sadness and hesitation at that time. That must be the most painful part in his heart. After all, sometimes the most intense and lasting pain was not caused by hatred or betrayal. But that person, who was it? Her heart slightly moved, and she was about to beat around the bush when she heard the whistling of the wind from outside. Some kind of large object fell from the sky, and a familiar voice sounded from outside. "What are you talking about?" The sound of metal clashing could be heard. Then, the person pushed open the door. A foreign beauty with blonde hair draped over her shoulders and a voluptuous figure walked in proudly. As she looked down, a noble and proud aura arose spontaneously. This was the most famous flame guardian of the Liefire Nation's St. Yuri Castle, the messenger of death who possessed both beauty and cruelty. Courier saw Sun Lang and showed a big smile. "Usually, when I return from a mission, you should give me a big hug of love and a kiss." Sun Lang smiled and said, "That kind of love is too heavy. You can't bear it. You still want a kiss after killing a girl in your arms? What kind of joke is this?" One had to know that a kiss from a certain princess could turn a not-so-young frog into a very young and handsome prince in an instant. For the princess to be able to kiss a frog into a prince, it obviously involved an indescribable mysterious power. Ashamed, Sun Lang felt that he did not have such terrifying power and could not do that, but he was confident that a kiss from him could at least turn a woman into a female pharaoh, the kind that would enter a coffin. Courier did not know what Sun Lang was thinking. Her confession of love was still rejected, which made her feel a little disappointed. The husband and monarch that she chose for herself were good in every way, but he was too reserved. This seemed to be the racial characteristic and common problem of the Easterners. They were always somewhat inexplicably reserved and not frank at all. It was not that he did not like women. He also liked beautiful faces and seductive bodies, and he always peeked at her breasts and thighs. Why didn't he just touch them directly? Especially in the past few days, she was a little impatient and decided to follow the method taught by her parents. Choosing a husband was the same as choosing a prey in the glory hunt. She always had to choose the one that she liked the most. When choosing, she had to choose carefully, and once she chose, she would not hesitate. If she really liked the man, she would sneak in his tent at night and directly have sex with him. She had accepted the inheritance and guidance in this aspect from her parents, but during those years in the tribe, no one dared to sneak into her tent. Of course, no man could catch her eye. Now that she had finally found the most suitable one, she bravely decided to sneak into his tent at night and have sex with him. But the result? It was always hard to explain, which made her sigh. "Father, mother, the method that you taught seems to be a little wrong. The man that I like must be stronger than me. I can't do it." In short, Miss Courier was very melancholy, but she was a top hunter. Growing up in the polar tribes in her early years of hunting had already trained her to have a strong temperament and patience. Now, in her eyes, having sex with this man was no different from an extremely difficult hunt. After many battles of wits and courage, she finally succeeded. The sweetness and sense of accomplishment of victory was definitely unparalleled. So she adjusted her state of mind and said, "We're back." Long Wanda also followed in, nodding at Sun Lang as a greeting. This Russian's Chinibu disease was showing signs of becoming more and more serious recently, as if he was going through puberty again. He was filled with a rebellious mentality and had rather complicated feelings towards Sun Lang, but at least he was still obedient. Sun Lang looked at the expressions of the two and said, "Still nothing?" Long Wanda blushed, while Courier's expression was much more natural. In terms of temperament, there was a huge gap between the two. A fruitless operation was clearly a shameful thing. Long Wanda's embarrassment was also very much in line with the temperament of a young man. Courier, on the other hand, was much more confident. She knew that she had done her best and had not neglected her duty, so she was not the least bit ashamed. She felt that a fruitless operation could only mean that there was a deviation in the operation plan. Then she just had to modify it and move towards the final goal. So she said, "These few days, we've been patrolling and setting up defenses at various points on the western and southern borders. With the help of the Ming Province Army, the possibility of the target quietly passing through is not very high." In other words, the enemy seraph might not be planning to break out of the encirclement and escape to the south. This was the problem left behind by the matter of Qi Guanyin. At the time, the Wang clan's suicide meant that the plan in Tensei province was finished. The seraph, who had returned from departing fire under the orders of Empress, had suffered a crushing defeat. All of its trump cards and methods had become a joke. At the time, the seraph had not shown itself, but it was definitely nearby to monitor the progress of the plan. With Sun Lang's methods and the assistance of his own seraph, he would definitely be able to find it after spending some time. But at the time, Sun Lang had chosen to rush to Ming Province and inform Qi Guanyin to come see his wife one last time. Although he did not regret his choice at the time and would still make the same choice if given another chance, there were always gains and losses when weighing the pros and cons. The price was that the seraph had been able to take advantage of the chaos to escape. As a result, the Ming Province Army had been mobilized to work with 2 seraphs to clean up the enemy, but not a trace of it had been found even after several days. It was as if the seraph had vanished. Sun Lang muttered, "It didn't run south? I thought it was going to rush back to report." Courier said, "That's normal. Even I have heard of Empress Tensei's methods. She was not stingy with her rewards for her subordinates, who performed great deeds and perfectly carried out her orders, and her punishments for her subordinates who messed things up were enough to make even the so-called brave warriors tremble in fear." She let out a cold, pleased laugh. The matter in Ming Province is so important, but it actually messed things up to such an extent that Tensei Province was forced into such a passive state. It would be strange if Empress let it go. Besides, if the enemy forces were unexpectedly strong to the point that they could not resist, she would make some accommodations. But the problem this time was with the Wang clan. The seraph and the Wang clan were monitoring each other day and night, but they actually did not notice the other party's disloyalty and allowed the Wang clan to do such a thing. He. Sun Lang thought for a while and said, "You're saying that it doesn't have the guts to go back." "That's most likely the case." Creel sneered. "Although the change in the Ming province is so important, I don't think that Seraph is so loyal that it would risk being tortured and executed to report to its master. It's most likely still in the Ming province, plotting to redeem itself by meritorious service." Sun Lang smiled. "It's just one. I think it's going to be even more difficult." Mao Mei said, "It only has one chance to act. We can't find it now because there are no clues or traces for us to follow. Once it makes the slightest movement, I'm afraid we won't have any chance." Sun Lang nodded and said, "Its mission is to stir up chaos in Ming province, but the Wang clan has already thrown all the blame on Tensei province. No matter what happens in Ming province, it will only make Tensei province even more passive. Under such circumstances, what else can it do?" Courier thought for a while. "That's true. No matter what, it's not wrong to be prepared." Sun Lang said indifferently, "Qi Guanyin has already informed Wang Rulong and the others. That fellow is still in a daze in front of his wife's grave, but there's an elite troop stationed at the foot of the mountain. The one leading the troop is Lu Nan, and it's said that he's the most stubborn subordinate of Qi Guanyin. As long as he's set his mind on something, he'll even dare to go against Qi Guanyin. With him stationed here and protecting Qi Guanyin's safety, even if Qi Guanyin chases him away with a whip, he'll definitely not back down. So Qi Guanyin's safety is guaranteed. As for Lu Shouyin and Old Hu, they're working in the Marquis mansion, handling all kinds of affairs. With me here, even if 10 seraphs come, it'll be useless. As long as the civil and military in Ming Province are as stable as Mount Tai, Ming Province won't fall into chaos. After Sun Lang finished his introduction, he concluded, but that seraph is like a mosquito that flew into a bedroom. After discovering it, it didn't kill it, but instead escaped. This is the most infuriating thing, because there's a buzzing fellow hiding in the dark, ready to sting you. Even if it bites you, it'll just itch for a while, and you'll be fine after a few days. There's no danger, but it's still very annoying. He looked at Courier and Long Wanda. We have to find it, kill it, and then take its equipment. I'll think of a way to bind the equipment, erase it, and give it to Yin Luo as a betrothal gift. Yin Luo, who had been listening obediently at the side, jumped up and said, "Who wants a betrothal gift?" Sun Lang widened his eyes and said emotionally, "You don't even want a betrothal gift? Are you going to give me a dowry or not?" "Wrong. Who wants your betrothal gift?" Yin Luo shouted with a red face. "And that's a seraph. You can give it to whoever you want. It'll be strange if the Divine King and the bishops don't go crazy." As she said this, she suddenly paused, as if she had thought of something. Sun Lang blinked. "What's wrong?" Before Yin Luo could say anything, there was a noise outside, and the mechanical voice of the auxiliary mech soul, "You feller," rang out. "Warning, hostile flying object detected. Pilot, please respond immediately." Long Wanda and Courier became alert. Long Wanda immediately rushed out. Creel, on the other hand, thought of the betrothal gifts mentioned just now. It seemed that he wanted to habitually criticize Long Wanda. He hesitated for a moment and fell behind Long Wanda by a few steps. Long Wanda had already pushed open the door, and the two seraphs parked outside were ready to go. This was the most powerful weapon of war in the Livefire Kingdom. The top of the Seraph battle order, Seraph, the most reliable force in the Livefire Kingdom. Long Wanda walked towards his partner, who had been fighting side by side with him. Courier glared at Zhang Yin Luo, but knew that now wasn't the time to bicker, so he also followed him out. Looking at the two seraphs, Yin Luo's expression suddenly changed. She shouted, "Don't go." Chapter 502. Hundreds of years ago, the first war of heaven's origin had almost wiped out all human civilization in the known world, plunging the world into an era of unprecedented darkness. After terrible sacrifices and a long struggle, humans finally vanquished the powerful foe from beyond the heavens, ensuring the continuation of their race. Though the invaders had been completely wiped out, they left behind relics that transcended time. Those mysterious relics of the war were acquired by 5 different nations, becoming the greatest secret of each nation. Those 5 nations would later become the 5 greatest nations in the world, possessing different but equally brilliant social civilizations and technological prowess. They reigned supreme in the world, and were also the main force that repelled the Sky Demon from beyond the realm in the Second War of Heaven's origin. The Livefire Nation, also known as the Divine Right of Flames, was one of the 5 great nations, possessing unparalleled firearms. Religion and politics were united in this nation. The Emperor of a nation was also the Pope of the Order of Flames, and the Order was the true ruling class of the nation. The clergy monopolized flame technology, forbidding scientific research and private firearms modification, essentially ensuring the Order's superiority and ruling power. At the same time, it led to the abnormal development of firearms technology. One of the direct consequences was that the Order of Flames possessed various wondrous technological creations, from a series of kinetic armor for the Blazing Angels to the speedy and powerful Nightmare motorcycle, as well as standard firearms such as the Thermite heavy machine gun, Fireblast shotgun, and microwave oscillator musket. All of them were proof of the Livefire Nation's great achievements in firearms. On the other hand, the civilians of the Divine Right Nation, from the hunters of the borders to the farmers, were still using ancient firearms for self-defense and hunting. The inferior gunpowder, crude barrels, and extremely inefficient reloading method meant that their pitiful firepower was more than enough to fend off attacks from beasts and bandits. But when it came to resisting the Order of the Blaze, A single holy knight in mobile armor could slaughter 1,000 people without being wounded. He could do it barehanded, and those pitiful guns could not even break through his defense. There was also an extremely strict ban on the modification and experimentation of firearms. If you were found out or reported, even if you only tied a circle of iron wire to the shotgun at home or added a simple mechanical sight to assist in aiming, you would be burned at the stake. You blasphemer, if your gun is not good, why don't you go to the local church and ask the priest of fire for help? How dare you sully the radiance of the spirit of flames with your filthy hands? That was about it. This matter was even very funny. Sun Lang was the clearest person, but other than Sun Lang, there must be others who knew who was the greatest threat to the Huda Empire and the current world order. Without a doubt, it was the Raging Flames Divine Power Nation. The firearms of the Li-Fire Nation were the best in the world, and the fire cult had persevered in unearthing the power of fire. They constantly promoted the innovation of equipment and pursued stronger and more powerful weapons. Here was the problem. With the technological power of the Burning Fire Church, could they promote the gun revolution and modify and simplify the powerful but complicated guns of the church, even at the cost of reducing their power, so that they could be mass-produced, used, and maintained so that even the dumbest farmer could use them quickly after simple training? The answer was absolutely yes. But they would not do that at all. On the contrary, they developed even more complicated and powerful flame tactics, lengthened the manufacturing process, and deepened the firepower of the firearm. While increasing the firepower, they also made the operation and usage more complicated. Special ammunition, specialized maintenance processes, and complicated manufacturing processes. Everything was for one purpose. They kept widening the technological advantage between the church and the country bumpkins, and even the whole world, so that the stupid and humble civilians would never have the power to resist the church. That was the basic national policy. Even during the Second War of the Heaven's origin, when the situation reached the most critical moment, even the divine emperor began to waver. The bishops did not give in at all. They even declared that even if the extraterrestrial devils destroyed the country, they would not allow the civilians to have access to the flame technology and the modification license. It was a very smart, very wise, and very reasonable choice. After all, if they lost the right to rule and privilege, what was the point of the country existing? That was it. The Order of Flames maintained their rule, the stability of the country, and the interests of a small group of people through extreme pressure, unrelenting vigilance, and religious belief. The fire cult was a tool to maintain the rule, and the fire cult, the so-called battle sequence of the fire angels, was the backbone of the fire cult's military force. From top to bottom, there was a clear hierarchy. The flame guards were the warriors who stood at the top of the battle sequence of the fire angels. They had the highest honor and the greatest strength. Only they were qualified to drive the fire angel equipment, which was the most powerful combat force in the Kingdom of Fire. Like the 7 luminaries Grand Sword Master of the Empire, it was the symbol of the country's military power. All the members of the fire cult yearned for it and worked hard for it. It was just like how the warriors of the Empire fought against the Imperial Army with martial arts. The priests of the Divine Power Kingdom also fought with firearms and power armor. To them, all kinds of firearms and combat equipment were their comrades in arms, their relatives, their lovers, and their most trusted helpers. The people of the Lihua Nation believed that the spirit of fire resided in the firearms. That was their faith, their guardian, and their final destination. It was almost their life. So, would you be wary of your mobile phone, your computer, and the Wi-Fi in your house? They would not be. So, after hearing the warning from the auxiliary Holy Soul, Long Wanda and Courier did not hesitate to run to the fire angel armor parked outside. Then, Inluo suddenly shouted, "Don't go!" All of this happened in a flash. Except for Inluo, no one noticed anything unusual. Long Wanda ran out a few steps ahead. The cockpit of the fire angel was already open and on standby. Long Wanda was stunned when he heard this. The next moment, the half-squatting steel giant suddenly roared and pounced on Long Wanda. The open cockpit was like a bloody mouth that swallowed the pilot. It was like a cage made of steel. The death messenger next to him also moved and rushed toward Courier. But Courier was a few steps behind Long Wanda. These few steps determined the result. Sun Lang's reaction was the fastest. After Yin Luo shouted a warning, he didn't even think about it and stretched out his hand. A gentle force pulled the girl behind him. At this moment, the Lone Walker had already detained Long Wanda. The death messenger pounced on Curry, who was stunned on the spot. Just like how otakus would be stunned and shocked when they found that their mobile phone and computer had suddenly turned into a robot with big breasts and big buttocks and was about to rush over to rape them. Courier was also stunned. She did not even realize what the fire angel was about to do. In an instant, a sharp force that tore through the breeze swept past her. Invisible sword chi roared angrily and struck the death messenger that was pouncing over, directly sending it flying. The blazing angel armor was indeed the strongest war weapon of the Livefire Nation. Its reaction was extremely fast, and it instantly transformed in the air. Two long and narrow blades appeared on its arms, and the propeller on its back adjusted its direction. Flames spewed out, and the huge body of the blazing angel armor rotated in the air, and an earth-shattering flame windmill rolled towards us. Sun Lang let out a long whistle as a warning. He grabbed the metal lampstand beside him and pushed it from the center to the sides. The candlestick at the top and the base at the bottom flew away at the same time. The lampstand turned into a straight metal rod. He held one side and used the lampstand as a sword to stab at the windmill. The large windmill that was madly spinning, the blades and flames turning into a wheel of light, came to a sudden stop. This stab directly landed on one of the blades, causing the ferocious momentum to come to a halt. With a flick of Sun Lang's wrist, the blazing angel's huge body that was suspended in the air involuntarily floated up. Then he chopped down on the death messenger's head. With a loud explosion, the death messenger was directly smashed into the wall several dozen meters away. The lampstand couldn't withstand the sword chi and collapsed into a pile of iron scraps. Sun Lang took 2 steps forward, his hands chopping and hammering, directly knocking the lonely messenger to the ground. Using both hands, he pulled off a piece of armor plate. Long Wanda, are you dead? Does your fire angel have the Iron Maiden function? However, even though the Lone Walker was caught off guard, it was still a blazing angel equipment after all, so it immediately began to resist. Sun Lang was afraid of hurting Long Wanda, so he couldn't do anything about it for the time being. Following Yuffler's rigid battle analysis, Long Wanda's voice faintly came from inside. I'm fine. Fuck. What's going on? Euphemia. Answer me. As a Flame Guardian, I order you to perform an emergency reset and logic restart. Sun Lang was slightly relieved. He smiled and said, It seems that the Fire Angel does not have the Dragon Lady's noble phantasm effect. I can suggest to the Emperor God to add a traitor execution function. Courier also rushed out and shouted at the Death Messenger's auxiliary mechanical soul to perform an emergency reset. However, the Death Messenger did not care about him. After standing up from the ruins, it raised the 2 cannons in its hands. But before it could fire, Sun Lang's figure appeared like a ghost. He directly pulled the 2 autocannons down with both hands, grabbed the barrels, and started a home run. But after all, he was only one person, and he went to beat up the Death Messenger. The Lone Ranger got up, activated the ejector, and rushed into the sky. Right at this moment, there was a thunderous roar not far away. It was a bolt from the blue, and a purple light flashed. Hushoshin stood on the roof with the thunderbow in his hand and shouted, Sun Lang. Sun Lang shouted as he beat up the Death Messenger. The target is the Lonely Messenger. Make it come down. Without another word, Hushoshin knocked an arrow on his bow and shot it furiously. Lightning snakes snaked through the air endlessly. Instead of attacking the target, they laid down a lightning net, sealing off the direction of the enemy's escape. The Lonely Messenger saw this and immediately activated its counterattack mechanism. A rocket launcher popped out from its shoulder. More than 10 mini rockets locked onto the target and flew towards Hushoshin. However, Hushoshin was used to archery. He was more familiar with it than the old oil seller. He held the thunder bow horizontally and pulled it into a full moon shape. 5 lightning arrows were formed in an instant and shot out from the bow. All the rockets exploded in the air. Another lightning arrow was formed and connected with the lightning net that was set up earlier. As soon as the arrow was shot out, thunder rumbled in the sky. After all, the auxiliary saint soul was just a rigid auxiliary intelligence. It was not an experienced pilot. Facing Hushoshin, who had been kiting the sky demon for more than 20 years, it was at a disadvantage. Old Hu was not one of the top warriors of the Imperial Army. If it was someone like the 7 Luminary Sword Saint, the lonely messenger would have fallen to the ground and could not move. After all, a machine was just a machine. Without a human, it was just a pile of scrap metal. Hushoshin's pride, as the top archer of the Empire, was protected. He sneered and pulled the bow again. However, the lonely messenger did not say anything and turned around to run away. After all, he was not one of the top warriors of the Imperial Army. He could rely on the strength and rich experience of the Imperial Army to stay undefeated. However, if the lonely messenger wanted to run away, there was nothing he could do. Sun Lang was also surprised. However, the performance of the Death Messenger was extremely strong. Even if it was suppressed, its defense and counterattack were extremely fierce. If he left the Death Messenger and chased after the lonely messenger, the consequences would be unimaginable if this blazing angel caused havoc in the House of Marquis. Courier also thought of this. After all, she was the heroine of Lihua. She only hesitated for a moment and made the right decision. She said sternly, "Destroy it." Sun Lang already had this idea. However, he was worried about Courier's opinion. Therefore, he could not make the decision immediately. Hearing this, his eyes turned sharp. The roaring sword Qi gathered in his right hand. However, in the next moment, lightning arrows were shot out again and temporarily stopped the lonely messenger who wanted to run away. Hushoshin shouted, "Imperial Army! Qi Guanyan's Imperial Army has not taken it away. Lord Liu, go and give the dragon crouching chain to Sun Lang. Quick!" During Lord Liu's tenure in the censorate, he had trained himself in thwart kung fu and lightness skill through fighting with other officials. He was also a swift and decisive person. In just a moment, his figure broke through a roof and rushed towards Sun Lang. Then, he channeled all his strength into his arms and threw an emperor's weapon that Qi Guanyin left here over to him. When Qi Guanyin was placed under house arrest in the House of Marquis, Sun Lang took away 2 of Qi Guanyin's Imperial Army. After that, many things happened. Qi Guanyin was disheartened and even had thoughts of going into seclusion. The 2 Imperial Army that symbolized the Emperor's appreciation and wealth were now sad things in Qi Guanyin's eyes. When the House of Marquis asked to return them, he politely declined. In addition, there were many things to do recently. Old Hu and the others were very busy and did not have time to waste with Qi Guanyin. Therefore, they could only temporarily leave the Imperial Army here and deal with it after they were done with the current affairs. Now it was in Sun Lang's hands. In Sun Lang's hands, the thunder bow could cause dark clouds to cover the city and golden snakes to dance wildly. In Sun Lang's hands, the dragon crouching chain could even lock up a dragon. How could it be a seraph? My Skylock. Bastard. Chapter 503. Autumn Cloud Sky Locking Dragon Sword. It was one of the 2 Imperial Army items that Qi Guanyin, the great general of Mingzhou, had. After all, dual wielding was an important characteristic to measure one's combat strength. Furthermore, it was normal for a warrior to have a secondary weapon. With Qi Guanyin's military achievements and martial arts, it was natural for him to have a second Imperial Army item. It also showed that the great general was kind and that the emperor never mistreated his subjects. For example, Zhao Yunlong also had 2 Imperial Army items. One of them was personally renamed by Sun Lang, and the name was very nice. At that time, it shocked the 6 armies. Everyone even thought that the great general's weird naming habit had finally changed, if they didn't see the perverted smile on Sun Lang's face. As a matter of fact, the imperial weapons were the strategic weapons of the Lady of Earth. Other than the mass-produced imperial weapons, such as the startling sword and the wandering dragon dagger, which were used to deal with the third place of the military selections, the high-level imperial weapons were all extremely precious and difficult to make. Therefore, the process of awarding them to the meritorious officials was extremely complicated. Not only did it have to be strictly verified, but it also had to go through a strict political review. Other than that, the craftsmen of the imperial treasury and the imperial treasury had to study the martial arts and battle records of the person awarding them. Then, they would decide which imperial army item to award. Finally, they would submit it to the imperial court for the emperor and the relevant officials to discuss and review. This kind of complicated mechanism effectively ensured that the imperial army would not be awarded to people with bad intentions or people with exaggerated reputations. It also allowed the imperial army to be used to its fullest potential. After all, Old who was an archer, they couldn't give him a pair of swords, right? As for Old Zhao, she was known as the general of the Flying Dragon. Her imperial armament, flying wings, ensured her high mobility and agility. Together with her spear techniques that could destroy an army of 1,000, she was enough to become an enemy's eternal nightmare. As for Qi Guanyin, the 2 imperial army swords that he had been given had been carefully researched by the central government. The red maple whitestone sea calming halberd would be a heavy weapon used to defeat 10 arbiters and wipe out thousands of soldiers on the battlefield, and it would be responsible for damage output. As for the autumn cloud spatial lock dragon sword, it would be a small and powerful self-defense weapon. Naturally, it would be used as a support weapon. When this chain's word fell into Sun Lang's hand, the world changed color. If the craftsmen of the Imperial Armament Directorate and the Armory saw this scene, they would probably shed tears on the spot. It was because Sun Lang, one of the former leaders of the country, was the sword saint of the empire who had done many small things. He had proven with his actions and brilliant results that he had made the imperial army shine with a different kind of brilliance. The target was not the death messenger, but the lone wanderer who wanted to escape. In an instant, the chains crossed the sky and intertwined, forming a net in the sky. Even someone as powerful as the blazing angel would have to wait helplessly under this power. This was because the one who used this imperial army sword and controlled this chain was Sun Lang. He was a master in the art of rope, the promoter of tortoiseshell, and the pioneer of modern S&M culture. At that moment, everyone present trembled in fear. The lone wanderer and the auxiliary holy soul did not even last for a second. In an instant, countless dragon, subduing chains appeared and wrapped around the lone wanderer. Not only did the user have peerless martial strength that was ranked at the top of the world, but he also had the terrifying instinct of being able to involuntarily tie up a tortoise shell. When this instinct was combined with the powerful skills of a warrior, Sun Lang suddenly realized that there was this kind of operation. In short, the lone wanderer was tied up like a horse. His wrists and ankles were tied together and locked behind his back, blocking the launch ports of the ejectors on his back. All the weapon modules on his body were firmly bound by chains. Even the chin of his faceplate was locked by something similar to a ball. God knew how Sun Lang had managed to tie up this thing with chains. Therefore, the lone wanderer who had flown into the sky was like a kite without wind. With a casual pull from Sun Lang, the lone wanderer was smashed down, accompanied by the old-fashioned report of the auxiliary holy soul, Euphemia. There was also Long Wanderer's furious roar. The high level of restraint of the double rope technique was the nightmare of all pilots. It was a mental devastation. Sun Lang was unperturbed. He even found a secret weapon that made the holy knights of the Flaming Angels battle order flee at the mere sight of it. Think about it. The brave and fearless holy knights were bound by the imperial army, tied up in an undignified manner, and forced to show all kinds of new postures to their comrades in front of 2 armies. The lone wanderer fell to the ground with a thud. Sun Lang stepped on the death messenger and said calmly, "You haven't filled up the hole you dug to imprison this guy, right? Continue to bury it." Soon, the death messenger was kicked into the hole and filled up with soil again. Sun Lang personally stepped on the hole more than 10 times to make sure the soil was firm. On the other side, Old Hu and the others dug up another hole with shovels as fast as they could. Sun Lang nodded with satisfaction and waved his hand. Next, the lone walker was still tied up by the dragon, subduing Chang. Even Long Wanda, who was in the cockpit, was forced into such a difficult and humiliating position. He even had the thought of dying. Hearing this, he roared, "Let me out first. Let me out quickly. Spirit of the fire. This is too disgusting." Courier stood beside Sun Lang. Although he looked worried, he could not help but laugh when he saw Long Wanderer, who had different political views, in such a sorry state. "Your Excellency Joseph, the Iron Knight of the Church, it seems that you have found a new job. I heard that there are many shops in the underground city of St. Yuri. Do you want to work there? Business must be booming." Long Wanderer roared, "Courier, I swear that if you are in the same situation as me in the future, I will laugh at you 100 times, 1,000 times, just like you are today." Mao Mei smiled and said, "If Sun Lang wants to play this game, I will play along with him. I didn't expect his skills to be so good. Being treated roughly once in a while, or being tied up like this, unable to move, and then being teased like this, seems to be quite exciting." Such bold words were too exciting for a traditional Eastern country like the Empire. Old Hu pretended not to hear. Lu Shoyin looked around at the scenery, and In Luo spat with a red face. Long Wanderer was even more furious. "You're a country girl with a head full of desires. You have forgotten the teachings of the Spirit of the Fire. You are a disgrace to the church. Look at you now. What do you look like, a flame guard? If the bishops see you like this..." Courier yawned out of boredom and said lightly, "Church, flame guard, bishops. Is it still useful to talk about this now? Joseph, until now, you still don't understand?" Of course, Long Wanderer did not understand. Not only did he not understand, but this matter was too outrageous. First, he was scolded by the lone walker who he got along with day and night like a family member. It was as if he had returned to Chaldea and was suddenly attacked by Mashu with a big shield. Then, when the lone walker carried him to escape, he was suddenly put in such a shameful position. It was as if Egg Face suddenly appeared after being beaten by Mashu, and then signaled the shield girl to hold him and fix him in a certain position. Then Egg Face showed his shining teeth, pulled down the zipper of his pants, and showed a golden light, and showed a king smile, while the other Einer jars were watching with great interest. So, if you encountered such a terrible situation, would you still think about such trivial things as Rue Kingdom actually didn't compensate for such a big thing? Is the ACG going to die? So, Long Wanderer naturally did not have time to think about other things. But Courier thought about it. Sun Lang, who was squinting his eyes, also thought about it. Even Zhang In Luo, who reminded him at the beginning, also thought about it. They looked at each other, and their expressions were a little solemn. For other things, such as before, the two flame guards who got along with their respective Blazing Angel equipment and were very familiar with each other did not notice the abnormality of the Blazing Angel equipment, and Sun Lang, who was peerless in martial arts, did not notice the hostility, but In Luo actually noticed the abnormality. There was no time to delve into the reason. The more terrible thing was right in front of them. Courier looked at the lone walker, sighed, and walked to the front of the Death Messenger. The Blazing Angel equipment had been buried in the ground, and only its head was exposed. She looked solemn and said, "I am a flame guard, and I have the right and authority to know the truth. Answer me, whose order is this?" The auxiliary holy soul of the Death Messenger was silent for a moment, and the light in the helmet flashed, as if it was running some kind of logical judgment. Then a cold voice sounded, "I am under orders to capture the traitor Courier. You have colluded with a foreign country and colluded with Hutu. You must be escorted back to the country and be judged by fire." Courier's face suddenly changed, and she could not help but take 2 steps back. Even with her audacious personality, even though she had already made a choice and was mentally prepared, this day had come so early, and yet the truth was suddenly placed in front of her. She was still somewhat unable to accept it. After all, she was just a girl in the northern tribe of Lihua. She left the tribe, entered the vast world, and even joined the Fire Order. With her brilliant fighting skills, ruthlessness, and bravery, she was promoted all the way and finally became a flame guard who stood at the top of the battle sequence of the Blazing Angels. Of course, she followed the law of the jungle that she believed in, and with this belief, she was always successful and could retreat easily. However, without knowing it, the power of Lihua was also imprinted in the depths of her soul. Therefore, when the day came, she actually felt fear and nervousness for no reason, because it was too fast and too sudden. Hearing that, Long Wanda was stunned at first, and then he sneered and said, Courier, the news that you hunted me under the orders of the bishops has been released, hasn't it? You've been abandoned by the bishops, haven't you? I've already said that those rotten, treacherous old men are not trustworthy. They're fickle, and they're ruthless, just like your current situation. This is really karma. Listen to my advice. Quickly go to the Divine Emperor. If you beg me sincerely, maybe I'll put in a good word for you to the Divine Emperor. Long Wanda was very unhappy with Courier. Long Wanda was a royalist, while Courier was a bishop. The political standpoints of the two sides determined an innate conflict. Moreover, their personalities were extremely incompatible. Courier was domineering and flamboyant, while the calm and peaceful Long Wanda did not like her. They had many conflicts when they were in the kingdom of Lihua, and now there was a new enmity between the two sides. Long Wanda had been chased by Courier all the way to the Hutta Empire. Therefore, Curry being labeled as a traitor was completely the result of heaven's justice and retribution. Long Wanda was able to vent his anger, so how could he not feel happy? He laughed aloud with delight. However, at this moment, the Lone Walker's auxiliary soul, "You feller," suddenly said, "What are you laughing at? You're a traitor too." Mr. Long Wanda was like a duck being choked by the neck. The comedic effect was so good that even the gloomy Courier became spirited. She deliberately turned her head and let out a very obvious laugh. Sun Lang said seriously, "Comrade Joseph, it seems that you're also on the list." Long Wanda was full of envy. He flew into a rage and said, "Nonsense. Bullshit. This is impossible. I've done meritorious deeds for the church. I've shed blood for His Majesty. I want to see the Divine Emperor. I want to see the Divine Emperor." You fellers said blankly, "I'm going to take you back to my country." At this time, Long Wanda had already changed from a keyboard warrior who agreed with harsh punishments to a strict jurist who was extremely protective of the law and paid attention to procedural justice. He asked repeatedly, "We're directly determined to be traitors? What's going on? Are you kidding me? With the Flame Guards. Conviction requires the confirmation of both the bishops and His Majesty. We also need to organize a central committee meeting to publicly defend ourselves. This is the logical process of the church's law. Why arrest us directly? Why not summon us first? Who gave you that order? What the hell is going on?" You feller naturally turned a deaf ear. It was just an intelligent module that carried out the program's instructions. "I'm just carrying out orders. All rights of interpretation belong to the church. If you have any objections, report them to the Judicial Department when you return. Please note, Traitor Flame Guard, your current actions are not only fleeing from punishment, but also resisting arrest. This will increase your punishment. If you insist that you're innocent, don't resist and escape. Return to my country with me and prove your innocence in front of the Divine Emperor and the bishops." Sun Lang whistled. "I think this is far more difficult than repelling Li Hua's pursuit." Long Wanda was silent for a moment, then said decisively, "Sun Lang, let me go. I want to return to my country." "This silly child. You actually want to run back to your own death. How pitiful." Sun Lang stretched himself. "Don't tell me that you still have full confidence in the justice of the Li-Fire Nation." Long Wanda said loudly, "I believe in the Divine Emperor, and I believe in myself. I didn't betray my country or the church. I didn't do it. If I don't go back, I'll be convicted of this crime. What else can I do? Do I have to bear this crime for the rest of my life and implicate my family?" Chapter 504. Long Wanda's tone was resolute and decisive as he said, "Therefore, I must go back and clear my name. I must explain everything clearly in front of His Majesty, the Divine Emperor." Sun Lang ignored him and turned to Courier. "What about you? Where's your tribe?" Courier put on a cunning smile. "My home is in the tundra to the north of the Fiery Mountains, close to the polar region. Hundreds of tribes of various sizes live in that vast land. We don't have a fixed place, and we hunt for giant beasts and fish for a living. It takes us a lot of effort to find other tribes, not to mention the people of the Order of Fire." She snorted and said, "Besides, the terrain of the circumpolar tundra is complicated, the climate is harsh, and the weather is extremely cold. There are also ice storms from time to time. It is still a question whether the powerful but delicate war weapons of the Church can operate smoothly when they go there. So, no problem." "How can there be no problem?" Long Wanda shouted angrily. "Woman, are you cold-blooded? The reason why the theocracy didn't conquer the minorities in the north is because the climate there is harsh and the yield is low. The cost of conquering and managing them is too high. So, it's enough to keep the ruling power in name. That's all. If St. Yuri Castle is ruthless, do you really think that the Order can't find your tribe?" Courier's expression changed slightly, and then he said coldly, "Then they'll pay 1,000 times the price. If I were you, I wouldn't be so calm." Long Wanda said, "Even if there's only a slight possibility, I won't take the risk because they're my family. If something irreversible happens, my family won't be able to come back no matter how many people I kill." Sister Mao's face turned ugly. She gritted her teeth and said, "So, you're going to surrender and be brought back by your armor? You're going to bet your life and hope on the mercy of others? On the contrary, going back is the stupidest choice. If you betray us as a flame guard, the Church is afraid that you will join the Hutu Empire in a fit of anger. In order not to push you too far, they will not do anything to your family. If you really go back like a fool, not only you, but also your family will become meat on the chopping board." She said coldly, "Don't forget that I am a bumpkin in the north. My tribe does not have much wealth, but your family is a noble family with a long history in the theocracy. The land, manors, industries, and wealth under your name are innumerable. After such a thing happened, there are countless greedy hyenas waiting in the shadows, waiting to tear a piece of meat from your family. Under such circumstances, do you think anyone will care whether you're innocent or not? As long as you go back, even if you're innocent, I'll make you guilty." Long Wanda was silent for a moment before he said indifferently, "His Majesty the Divine Emperor will not sit idly by." Courier was so angry that he laughed. "Is there something wrong with your head? No matter what, placing the safety of one's family on the benevolence of others is simply laughable." Sun Lang listened to their quarrel for a while. At first, the two of them had been communicating in Hutu Chinese to take care of the thoughts of Sun Lang and the other people of the empire. Later, they became anxious and simply switched back to Slalor. Fortunately, Yin Luo was translating in a low voice. Sun Lang finally understood what was going on. He suddenly felt that Long Wanda was getting younger and younger. He had the right to speak on this matter. As a former commander of the army who was almost set up by the central government, he had been through hundreds of battles and had seen a lot of things. He had rich life experience and knowledge. Leaving everything else aside, he had been thinking about how to deal with the idiotic imperial court in the past 2 years. "Kuril's reign is right," he said earnestly. "Joseph, little Dirk, I know how you feel, and I understand your eagerness. But Creel is right. If you run back like this, you'll only be courting death. Meat-eaters are despicable. This is not nonsense. In this game of politics, let's see who is more shameless." He crouched down and patted the solitary walker. He said to Long Wanda inside, "First of all, you have to be sure of one thing. Your divine emperor is not some great sovereign who is just, righteous, compassionate, and kind. In fact, sovereigns have nothing to do with these good virtues. Since he can make a compromise with the bishops for the sake of revitalizing the country, he can also make another compromise for other benefits. For example, Sun Lang stretched out his hand and flicked the armor plate of the blazing angel. He said with a smile, "You and your family." Long Wanda was shocked. Sun Lang was clearly speaking ill of the divine emperor. He should have fiercely refuted, but he really could not find the words to refute. This world had never been as bright as he imagined. It was like a raging fire. Although it was dazzling and scorching, it could not dispel all the coldness and could not sweep away all the darkness. When you looked at the flame that brought light, the shadow of the darkness was behind you. Sun Lang clapped his hands and continued. So, as Courier said, before you understand what is going on, rashly going back is the worst choice. Is the same as handing over all the initiative to others. He stood up, took 2 steps, and raised a finger. Think about it. How did Yu Fei get killed? The Yu army under him is so good at fighting. Why did he die so obediently when the 12 gold medals appeared? And after he died, there was not even a splash. His Yu army, whose fighting strength was off the charts, did not even let out a fart. Why is this? He answered his own question and said loudly, because Yu Fei was not a warlord. His words were full of resentment and regret. It was because of his empathy for Yu Wumu and his sudden awakening. It was because of his admiration and yearning for Prime Minister Chao's foresight. It was because of his wild ambition and evil intentions after he understood the truth of the world. If a man could do it, why couldn't he do it? Before this, Inluo asked weakly, "Who was Yu Fei?" Sun Lang sighed. In short, it's a lesson learned from the mistakes of others. He skipped this topic and pointed to Long Wanda. Anyway, don't panic. Before we understand what is going on, we have to be fully prepared. Now wait. Sun Lang suddenly thought of something and asked, "Why did Blazing Angel betray us?" Long Wanda said impatiently, "Isn't that obvious? Of course, he received an order and identified us as traitors. So he carried out the detention and recovery procedure and wanted to take us back to Fort St. Yuri for trial." Sun Lang frowned and asked, "Whose order did he receive?" Long Wanda's voice became even more depressed. The Flame Guards are highly respected in the church. Usually, the trial court is not qualified to arrest us unless there is conclusive evidence or His Majesty and more than half of the bishops agree. Only then can an arrest warrant be issued and the detention procedure be carried out. Doesn't this mean that you have been betrayed by your divine king? Of course not. Long Wanda's tone was extremely shaken. His Majesty may have been deceived by others, or perhaps he did not want to give others the right to criticize him. After all, the bishops were so aggressive. He had no choice but to detain me first, and then conduct a fair and open interrogation to prove my innocence. Seeing that Long Wanda could not even speak clearly, Sun Lang just smiled and waved his hand. Let's just assume that the divine king thinks so. But I still have a question that I don't understand. He paced back and forth on the spot, muttering to himself, "But I still find it strange. You two are flame guards with high status, while St. Yuri Castle is so far away. How did they receive the news when they were so far away? Who did they receive the news from? And why are they so sure of the authenticity of the news that they directly started the detention procedure of the Blazing Angel and used the most violent method to control you?" Courier frowned and said, "You mean," Sun Lang said slowly, "these days, although you have been involved in the civil strife in Mingzhou, you have not publicly declared that you have betrayed the country. Even if the church had received the news through special channels, they would have summoned you back to ask about the situation first and would not have used such violent means. Besides, you said that the detention of the Flame Guards is a big matter and requires the consent of the Divine King and half of the bishops. They are all experienced thieves. Why would they be so impulsive?" Long Wanda seemed to have thought of something. "You mean, there are 2 possibilities. First," Sun Lang looked around and looked at Courier, Long Wanda, and Zhang Yinluo. "Did someone give a fake order to the Blazing Angel armor?" As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 shook their heads. Courier said, "This is the most impossible situation. You're not from the Lihua Kingdom, so you don't know. The flame technology of the Shunquan Kingdom is unparalleled in the world, and the blazing angel armor is a great success. The auxiliary Holy Soul is a gift from the Spirit of Flame, sacred and top secret. Only the Divine King and the bishops have the scepter that commands them. There is no possibility of falsification. Long Wanda muttered, "What a joke." It's like the Imperial Army of Hutu. Sun Lang pulled the dragon's subduing chain with a faint smile. It's not the same thing, Long Wanda said loudly. Aside from being able to control the blazing angel, Creel, and I can also use combat equipment such as the blazing sun armor. Due to the blazing guardian's revered status, we have the authority to do so. Although I don't know why you can use other people's sovereign weapons. Can you use other 7 luminary sacred swords? By the same logic, even if the blazing angel is equipped with the information warfare intrusion module and can invade the battle equipment of the blazing angel battle order, it can't do anything to the blazing angel of the same level. Sun Lang's expression changed slightly as if he thought of something, but he did not say anything. He thought for a moment and nodded. I see. Then this possibility can be ruled out. So, there's only the second possibility left. Someone is misleading St. Yuri Castle. Facing everyone's eyes, he explained, during the civil war in Ming Province, our enemy was the blazing angel at close range and Tensei Province at far range. After the victory, we threatened both Hudu, Tensei Province, and the bishops of fire at the same time. For the bishops, now that the dust has settled, there are 3 consequences. First, the fact that the bishops colluded with the Heavenly Policy Palace can no longer be concealed. Second, the fact that Creel was ordered to hunt down Long Wanda can no longer be concealed. Third, the fact that the blazing angel has no records can no longer be concealed. Each of these 3 major events is enough for the Divine Emperor to take advantage of and make them suffer a few losses. Therefore, we have to keep the lid closed. As for Tensei Province, there is no need to talk about it. After he finished speaking, he concluded, after the failure in Ming Province and the news spread, Tensei Province became desperate and reported this matter to the bishops. They pulled those Russians into the fray and created fake news that was enough for the emperor to urgently recall the 2 blazing angels. I believe that with the resources of the bishops, the assistance of Tensei Province, and the evidence provided by the blazing angel, it won't be too difficult to do this. Courier thought for a moment and nodded. This explanation makes sense. Tensei Province is unwilling to accept the failure. The bishops are afraid that the secret will be exposed, so it's not surprising that they would take such actions. Then she sighed. Fortunately, the first design concept of the blazing angel and the other combat equipment is to protect the pilot. The flame guards who can pilot the blazing angel are even more precious. Even if the other party may have committed a crime, the trial must be carried out carefully. Therefore, the blazing angel's inner cabin is not designed to execute the pilot. Anyway, the auxiliary Holy Soul can take over the body and control the pilot. As long as the flame guards are sent back to St. Yuri Castle and handed over to the bishops for trial. This can also prevent the unjust killing to the greatest extent. Then Sister Mao glanced at the lone wanderer. Now, Sir Joseph is still lying here with such a handsome appearance, instead of being ground into meat paste by the dozens of saw wheels spinning out of the inner cabin. We really have to thank the bishops for this rare, humanized design. Long Wanda said angrily, in the end, you're still making sarcastic remarks and mocking me, you bastard. What are you talking about? Courier said lightly. You heard it too. Sun Lang's analysis should be the truth. Ordering the blazing angel to detain and send us back to St. Yuri Castle is just the beginning. If you still want to see the Divine King and prove your innocence, then please go ahead. Long Wanda roared. I'm not a fool. I'll definitely be intercepted and killed on the way. Sister Mao covered her mouth and said in surprise, there's actually intercepting and killing. Someone actually dares to intercept and kill the noble and sacred flame guards in broad daylight. How is that possible? Who dares to do that? Aren't they afraid of angering the Divine King? All right, stop mocking me. Long Wanda sighed. But if we don't go back, what should we do? We can't use the armor either. The bishops are already suspicious of us, but if we go back, we'll definitely be intercepted and killed. Without the armor, I'm afraid that a holy knight can kill us. The journey will be difficult and dangerous. How can we safely return to Ignis? How can we meet the divine king under the threat of the bishops, state the truth, and prove our innocence? There is one more thing that he did not say. How can I make the divine king believe me? After realizing this, Long Wanda's mood was very low. Then let's go back. At this moment, Sun Lang suddenly said. Facing everyone's surprised gazes, he rubbed his hands and chuckled. Everyone, I have another bold idea. Chapter 505. When Sun Lang showed this kind of smile, it meant that he was going to scheme against others again. When Old Hu saw Sun Lang's expression, he first instinctively shuddered and then breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was torturing others this time. Facing Courier's surprised and inquiring gaze, Sun Lang patted the lone walker's armor plate and smiled. Let's happily carry out the fishing law enforcement that we haven't done in a long time. Although Courier was proficient in sinology, a high-end and avant-garde term that reflected the spirit of humanistic law enforcement like fishing law enforcement had yet to appear in the ignorant and backward empire. Therefore, even Mao Mei did not understand the essence of this term. She asked, "What is fishing law enforcement?" Sun Lang smiled mysteriously. "You'll know soon. Come, let's discuss the details." Not long after, two blazing angels rose into the air and flew toward the north. Inluo watched the two combat equipment leave until they turned into a small black dot in the sky. Only then did she withdraw her gaze and sigh imperceptibly. "I hope it'll be fine." She turned her head and looked at Hu Shouxin. "Then the defense of the Marquis Mansion will be left to Captain Hu. We'll go hide in the underground shelter first." Sigh. Old Hu saw the worry on Inluo's face and smiled. "Just bear with it." Sun Lang doesn't say it out loud, but he's also very sorry that you were involved in this. He's trying to make your lives return to normal, just like now. I know, and I've been mentally prepared for this for a long time. Inluo smiled. It's all because of my brain cramping for a moment. At that time, I was meddling in the business of a strange ranger and ended up like this. Now, sigh. Even if we return to the Empire, it won't stop. Old was a little puzzled. What? The girl looked toward the distant north, a hint of worry flashing in her eyes. Nothing. I just feel that this matter won't be settled so easily. I hope Sun Lang is confident. The Death Messenger and the Lone Traveler had already left the Ming province, heading towards the vast north. At the same time, several carrier pigeons and messengers also set off, carrying the secret order towards the north. Currently, Hu Shouxin was the acting general of Mingzhou. However, with Qi Guanyan's tacit approval and the support of his army, military orders were still smooth, and it was not difficult to mobilize troops. However, it was in Mingzhou City, somewhere in the great river that ran through Ming province. A black shadow slowly emerged from the bottom of the water. A red light was reflected from the water, and a hoarse voice muttered to itself. "Oomph!" He took the bait. The blazing angel, who had never shown up and was the target of the Ming province's army and the two blazing angels, was hiding in the city of Ming province and licking its claws in the darkness. Now it was time to hunt. Two blazing angels and one Sun Lang. This is the enemy's absolute advantage in strength. With them around, I have no chance of winning. The blazing angel smiled coldly. It's not easy to transfer all of you out of Ming province, but I've finally found a chance. It was still waiting patiently because Sun Lang had just left Ming province. If it acted rashly and caused the target to send out a distress signal, with the other party's martial arts and strength, it would not take long for him to rush back. That's right, Sun Lang had left Ming province. Or rather, the pilot of the Death Messenger was not Courier at all, but Sun Lang. Thinking of this, the blazing angel sneered again. You didn't expect it, did you, Sun Lang? Your plan, which you thought was perfect, was right under my nose. I even heard the conversation you had after you took control of the two blazing angels. And those two stupid slaloids, seeing how much confidence you had in the so-called blazing angels, I feel sad for you. The blazing red light on its faceplate became even more demonic. It said eerily, "It's too sad. It's only been a few hundred years, and you pathetic worms have already forgotten? How did the blazing angel armor you were so proud of come about? It seems like you've all forgotten about it." That's right. Ever since its master gave it a new mission and new power, the two blazing angels had become its eyes and ears. With that kind of power and authority, not only could it fabricate the so-called emergency recovery command to make the two low-intelligence AIs believe it, but it could also monitor all the information they received in real time. Therefore, not only did it hear all the discussions between Sun Lang and the others, but it could also clearly sense that it was Sun Lang who had boarded the death messenger. Thinking of this, it felt a little irritated. Those slaloids are not so stupid as to be useless. They're also mentally prepared. The blazing angel side. They're really on guard. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to go through so much trouble, although it could fabricate the recovery command to make the death messenger and the lone walker forcefully recover the pilot. That was all it could do. Because no matter how magical that treasure was, it could only interfere with the logical judgment of the auxiliary holy soul. It could not modify and guide it out of thin air. Otherwise, it could just order them to self-destruct. After all, although it could now order the auxiliary holy soul with the highest authority, it could not go against the logic of the auxiliary holy soul. Even if its current authority was equivalent to the joint command of the divine king and the bishops, it could not make the blazing angel do something that went against its logic. For example, even the divine king and the bishops could not order the blazing angel to directly kill its pilot. These complicated logic and rules have been rooted in every auxiliary holy soul since the first generation of blazing angels. The sages of the church who developed the blazing angel armor were not so much protecting the pilot as guarding against the blazing angel. Thinking of this, the blazing angel sneered in its heart. It did not matter. Even if this was the case, it was useless. However, it thought of another problem. Since the judgment logic of the auxiliary holy soul was so strict, how did Sun Lang swagger in? Although I don't know how you deceived the recognition pattern of the death messenger. But this problem, there will be many opportunities in the future to figure it out. The blazing angel's laughter was filled with pride. What a good idea. You pretended to be courier and boarded the death messenger and went north with Long Wanda. When I rushed out to kill you, you came out of the death messenger and gave me a surprise. If I did not know your plan, I might have been deceived. But now, it is time for me to give you a surprise. He calculated the time again and the blazing angel's flying speed. He found that Sun Lang was far enough away, so he let out a sinister laugh. Although the previous plan was a complete failure, there was no real harm to it. After all, it was no longer itself and had been reborn. However, it was still very angry. It thought of Wang Shi, that hateful woman. She was like an ant, but she dared to deceive it and scheme against it. And she actually succeeded. This was simply a great humiliation. You think you have one just like this? It muttered to itself, "Whatever you want to protect, I'll destroy. When I'm done with this, your husband won't be able to live either. But before that, I have to complete the master's instructions and complete the mission." The director said to let this world. The red light on the faceplate instantly turned into a bloody light. Burn. The blazing angel rushed out of the river and completed the reassembly of its combat form amidst the dancing mist. The long-range weapon modules were all activated. The ear-piercing sound of metal rubbing against each other accompanied by the roar of the engine as the blazing angel shot towards the marquee of Jing'an's residence. Sun Lang and the two blazing angels have left. There is no one in the marquee of Jing'an's residence who can stop me. The only threat is the human called Hushoshin. His imperial army is a bow and has the power of thunder. Its power cannot be underestimated. And I have to guard against him sending a warning to Sun Lang. So I have to kill him first. Sun Lang replaced Courier to board the death messenger, so that woman Slaro is in the marquee of Jing'an's residence. She is a bargaining chip that can be used. other than that, devour my evil energy shackles. The next moment, the straight snow-white chains crisscrossed in the sky. It was so fast that the blazing angel was caught off guard and was immediately caught by the net in the sky. The blazing angel was shocked and exclaimed, "What? That's right. I am Gul'dan, who is more handsome than Daniel Wu." The familiar figure rode a brilliant sword and soared into the sky, holding a long halberd that was swallowing and spitting out blue light. That impudent smile, that smug expression, that terrifying aura had instantly revealed the identity of the newcomer. Although that long halberd was Qi Guanyan's imperial army, unless Qi Guanyan's head had been smashed by his wife's tombstone, he would never reveal such a despicable smile. "Old Tai, let's do a horizontal slash combo and a horizontal slash." Sun Lang rushed towards the blazing angel that was stranded in the sky and let out a roar that shook the entire city. Fishing success. Nico, 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 Nico. This was the red maple, white stone sea halberd. The blazing angel discovered something. The more despicable Sun Lang yelled, the harder he attacked. The blade of the halberd turned into a dazzling screen and swallowed the blazing angel like a storm. When a monster who was at the top of the seven luminaries Grand Sword Master deliberately planned a sneak attack on a target, even if the target was a blazing angel, it was useless. Once the target fell into his trap, there was no chance to resist. The sea halberd hummed happily, the blue halo unleashing the power of the sea. In the hands of Sun Lang, the power of the Imperial Army was maximized as it chased after its target. It was eager to drink the blood of the enemy and tear the flesh of the enemy. The shockwaves from the thousands of swings were concentrated on a single point. An unprecedented amount of power gushed out and struck the defenseless blazing angel to the ground. The dragon's subduing chains whistled down and weaved into layers of binding nets. Like a spider web, it bound the blazing angel tightly. Considering the current atmosphere, Sun Lang finally decided not to perform any more rope tricks. He held the sea halberd and landed steadily on the ground. The blazing angel struggled to get up. He was slightly surprised and raised his hand. The tip of the halberd touched the blazing angel's shoulder. The blazing angel's body seemed to be pressed down by a mountain. Even with the powerful strength of the blazing angel's armor, it could not move at all. Sun Lang said indifferently, "How is it? Are you surprised?" The blazing angel was beaten dizzy. The damage it suffered was secondary. The spiritual frustration it felt was indescribable. It roared, "What's going on? Didn't you already get on the blazing angel?" "Yes, it's so strange." Sun Lang sighed. "What a pitiful, silly child. You fell for it. So, instead of playing tricks with me, why don't you compete with me in swordsmanship?" The blazing angel seemed to have begun to doubt life. "How is this possible? How is this possible? I clearly sense that you got on the Death Messenger and then left Ming Province. Now the Death Messenger still shows that you are in the cockpit. What's going on? This power can't be wrong. How is this possible? Power." Sun Lang raised his halberd and patted the blazing angel's head. He smiled and said, "I know that you are very confused about your current situation and don't know how you failed. But it's okay, I don't care what you think. You know nothing about everything, but I seem to have found something interesting from your words and performance just now." His tone became deep. "For example, little friend, your origin." The blazing angel saw Sun Lang's eyes. It was something deep in his eyes. There seemed to be some kind of power hidden in those eyes that formed a whirlpool. It had a strange magic power that made the blazing angel's soul tremble slightly. That familiar feeling was like, as soon as this thought appeared, it jumped in fright and cried out, "How is this possible? Who are you? Who are you? You." Sun Lang raised his left hand slightly. The dragon's subduing chains quickly moved. The chains moved around and forcefully lifted the blazing angel from lying down to standing upright. Sun Lang looked at the armor that was close at hand. He stretched out his empty left hand and said indifferently, "Now, confirm my guess and explain my doubts. Let me see your true appearance." He pressed down on the blazing angel's helmet. The sturdy armor and perfect design had no meaning at all. Without any obstruction, the huge helmet was taken off by Sun Lang. It revealed the thing that resided within. Sun Lang was slightly surprised. As expected, you're not the sky demon, but you're not human either. He threw the helmet in his hand to the side and said, Wang sure guessed a part of the truth, but her understanding is limited and she doesn't know much. She can't guess what you are. Speaking of which, I'm really surprised. Actually, I'm also very surprised. The blazing angel spoke. No, it wasn't the blazing angel who spoke. The hoarse voice had changed. It became as hot as a flame, like a furnace that would never be extinguished. I thought that we could meet under more suitable circumstances. Sun Lang's expression was strange. After a moment, he slowly said, Ah. Chapter 506. The blazing angel's helmet had been taken off, but under the armor, there was no human figure. In other words, the one driving the blazing angel was a monster without a physical body. It was red in color and had a strange shape, like a gas or a gelatinous substance. It was surrounded by a bloody mist that was constantly shrinking, expanding, swallowing, and flowing. The one driving the blazing angel was such a thing. Or, it was the blazing angel itself. It had already merged with this body of unknown origin. It was like a saint's soul that had the assistance of a primary carrier. How this thing was created, or who created it, Sun Lang did not know. However, there was one thing he was sure of, and that was that there was an even more powerful will that had crossed a great distance and descended upon this fragile shell to communicate with him. It said, I thought that we would be able to meet under more suitable circumstances. The amount of information in this sentence was enough to make a lot of connections and considerations, so much so that Sun Lang was slightly surprised. He said with a somewhat surprised tone, Ah-ha. The voice of the will was calm, but there was a burning passion hidden in it. It wasn't because of anger, but because of its nature. It was like a gentle flame that could burn the human body and denature the protein. It asked, What did you think of? Sun Lang said lightly, It seems that I guessed wrong. I thought that woman was still the manipulator and controller of this matter. Now it seems that things are more complicated than I thought. You mean, the princess of the Hutu Empire? The other party replied, That woman's heart has been filled with hesitation and viciousness. It's like walking on a frozen river. She only has the house on the other side of the river in her eyes. She thinks that as long as she walks to the other side of the river, she can enter the house to get warm and avoid the cold. For this, she doesn't hesitate to run with big strides, but she doesn't know that the real danger is not the cold around her, but the ice under her feet. I have to say, this analogy is very objective and accurate. Sun Lang clapped his hands and nodded to show his praise. Then he said, as if nothing had happened, To be able to analyze it so accurately, that means she also has your people around her. Amazing. The other party seemed to be stunned for a moment. After a moment of silence, he asked in a strange tone, Who are we? Sun Lang chuckled. That's no fun. Previously, Long Wanda swore to me that there was no power that could interfere with the operation of the blazing angel and deceive the auxiliary sacred soul. He even used the 7 luminaries sacred sword as an example, saying that even if I had a way to use the other imperial army, I wouldn't be able to control the other sacred swords. He clasped his hands behind his back and said indifferently, Unfortunately, due to some problems left behind by history, I can still use the 7 luminaries sacred sword. In that case, in theory, there is indeed a power in this world that can interfere with the operation of the blazing angel and deceive the auxiliary holy soul. Am I right? The voice asked with interest, What is it? Why ask when you already know the answer? Sun Lang's eyes sharpened. Of course, it's a similar historical problem. Sun Ran's sword chi surged silently. The surroundings were still calm, and the sound of flowing water was not far away. The sky was blue, and the grass and trees were green. However, everything around had been enveloped by a powerful and mighty, murderous aura. Sun Lang's robe fluttered, and the sea halberd in his hand let out a long hum. The former sword saint let out a cold laugh that contained endless hatred. Every word was condensed with the taste of iron and blood. What a surprise. I didn't expect that in addition to a broken sword, there would be a broken spear with its own will. I was right, wasn't I? The annihilation fire that wandered in the north, the ancestral demonic weapon that gave the Slalos the power of fire. This is our first meeting. Do you want a greeting gift? The voice suddenly let out a long laugh. Then flames danced. The fire mist in the seraph instantly gushed out and then spread out, setting off a wave of fire in the spiritual world. The surrounding scenery was distorted by an invisible force. With a flash of red light, Sun Lang came to a world of fire in an instant. The surging sea of magma set off billowing heat waves, raging waves, and clouds of fire soared into the sky. The business of the mysterious will instantly became 100 times more grand and blazing. Yes, it's me. In the face of such a strange phenomenon, Sun Lang did not panic at all. He slowly raised the halberd in his hand. The voice chuckled. Do you really think you can do anything to me with this shoddy imitation? Sun Lang sneered. Before you say such big words, you might as well look at the end of your companions. Even if I only have a crowbar in my hand, I could still blow you up. Because it involved a certain historical issue, the degree of mockery was very high. However, the spirit of the progenitor magic tool, with a scorching voice, did not fly into a rage. Instead, it said, You have a point. With your achievements, you're on par with us. You deserve our respect. Sun Lang sneered. I don't need your respect. Do you want us to fight here first, or do you want me to go to St. Yuri Castle for a while? The voice said helplessly, It seems that you are very hostile to us. In fact, whether you believe or not, I have no reason to fight you. I did not meet you this time to fight you. Sun Lang mocked. Hey, I didn't know that you are pacifists who repay evil with kindness. It seems that you have a misunderstanding. We're different from the sky demon that you mentioned. The voice said helplessly. In the Second War of Heaven's origin, we were all helping humans to resist the invaders. Without our help, the human race would have perished. You should admit that, right? Sun Lang said indifferently. Yes, you are all pacifists who do not care about your own interests and only care about others. Just like Optimus Prime from Cybertron. You are the famous traitor and also an old friend of the people of Earth. For the survival of the human race, your hands are stained with the oil of countless people of the past. The spirit of the Livefire Kingdom, which meant a lot to the Livefire Kingdom, was not used to the way Sun Lang spoke, but it could still hear the wariness and suspicion in the human's heart. It sighed. I knew it. Now is not a good time to talk. You are still full of wariness and hostility toward us. Sun Lang said calmly, Then I am sorry. I am a very petty person. I just like to hold grudges. The voice sighed. I have a general understanding of what happened to you. But isn't the culprit of this matter the people of the Imperium? It may have made you suffer and suffer, but it also allowed you to gain such great power at the fastest speed. In the end, it was just carrying out the orders of the human race. Sun Lang said indifferently, Why do you think it was not broken and trampled 2 years ago? I see. The voice was actually happy. You let it go because of this? In other words, you're even now? Is this what the people of the Imperium mean? But you still don't like it, right? Sun Lang frowned and said, What the F*** are you talking about? This is the reason why I decided to meet you. The Will of Fire seemed to have realized that it had lost its composure. It softened its tone and said, Let's make a deal. Sun Lang said without hesitation, I refuse. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. The other party smiled. You should know that for various reasons, I am actually very influential in the Kingdom of Fire, especially now. Sun Lang's eyes flashed. It seems that you're on the side of the Divine Emperor. The spirit of the demonic soldier of fire was stunned again. Then, it said in a complicated tone, Why do you say so? Sun Lang said casually, The Bishops is a conservative force. It is large in scale and deeply rooted. It is a traditional force that has been passed down for a long time. Judging from the complicated logic settings and security of the auxiliary, holy soul on the seraph, The first generation of the bishops who designed the seraph and began to make use of your power were full of wariness and distrust of you. The conservative bishops naturally inherited such a will. They are strictly guarded against you and only see you as a useful tool, he smiled. Therefore, only the ambitious divine emperor who is slightly alone dares to make contact with you boldly, wanting to further make use of your power to cultivate his own force. What kind of courage, what kind of confidence, what kind of lofty ambitions, what kind of overestimation of one's own capabilities. The ancient will was silent again. This time, it was silent for a little longer. Then it sighed. If you had always been so smart, even I would have wanted to kill you. The smile on Sun Lang's face quickly disappeared. He snorted. Then come at me. The other party skipped over this topic. Since you've already seen through it, I might as well be frank. The divine emperor wants to make use of me, so he will not refuse to give me face over some trivial matters. We have common interests, so when I make a few requests that are not too excessive, he will usually gladly comply. Sun Lang asked, and then? It continued, I have seen your performance and actions in the past few days. I have a rough idea of what you want to do. You want to take Ming province under your control and make it your own force, right? You seem to want to take revenge on the empire. Although I do not know why you do not take a more direct and effective approach. I can indeed see that you do not intend to become enemies with Li Fire in the short term. Sun Lang said coldly, so what? Since we are not enemies, we can be friends. I believe that the kingdom of Li Fire must have a lot of things that you want. The voice said, with our identities, there is no need to bargain like a common person. I will be frank. The Death Messenger and the Lone Wanderer can both stay with you, Sun Lang said directly. Stay with me? Do you want to make a 360-degree, all-weather surveillance system? You can rest assured about this. Without this body as a medium, I would not be able to monitor the movements of these two blazing angels, although you will definitely not believe me. The voice said, then I can teach you a way to protect the core of the auxiliary saint soul. You have the same level of power as me, enough to block my interference and spying. I am very sincere. Sun Lang did not comment. Go on. Since you have taken Ming province, you will definitely not leave it there to fend for itself. After all, the land that you have taken must be carefully cultivated and maintained in order to have a good harvest and benefit from it. The devil said, in the north, you have a powerful neighbor. Whether it is trade or military technology exchange, I can provide you with help. I can even provide you with some things in private. Of course, everything must be done in secret. Something that can make the bishops and even the divine emperor fly into a rage. Sun Lang said, isn't this giving me something to use against you? The threat is mutual. Only by balancing each other can cooperation and peace be based on mutual checks and balances, the voice replied. If you expose this matter, I will be suspected and even punished by the bishops. But do you think that you will stay out of it? Therefore, I'm not worried about this. I think I understand. Sun Lang nodded. With such generous conditions, I am afraid that you are after something big. To me, this matter is indeed very important. I must admit that. The Ancient Will said, but to you, it is not difficult. Sun Lang showed an interested expression. Oh, tell me about it. The national treasure of the Li Fire Empire said solemnly, not long ago, although it was thousands of miles away, I could still sense it. It woke up. Sun Lang was startled at first, but then he understood who it was referring to. The killing intent of the Sun Ran surged from him again. Sun Lang said with a fierce expression, I see. What is this? An apology and a request for me to let it go? On the contrary, the voice said in a serious tone, please do not let it go. Sun Lang frowned. What did you say? Now it seems that you will have to go south sooner or later to the Hutu Empire. The Will of Fire said, I mean, when the time comes, please let it continue to sleep or even destroy it. Sun Lang blinked and was amused. Aren't you brothers? What are you doing? Who said we are brothers? Although a long time ago, we had the same master, but there was a trace of resentment in the words of the devil ancestor. As weapons, do you think we will get along well? It made sense. Just like the conflict between the infinite activities in the game and the limited energy of the players, the dancing swords and the girl in the front line were probably irreconcilable. Sun Lang put aside the random thoughts in his head and said, "Just because of this? What a joke." "Of course not," the Will of Fire said in a serious tone. "It is awake, and I am afraid that no one will guard against it. You know what I'm talking about, and you should be able to guess what it wants to do." Sun Lang's expression suddenly became very ugly. "In the past 2 years, I also tried my best to hint to the Emperor God, and with the help of the power of the Li-Fire Empire, I slowly pieced together the truth and learned countless secrets. I know you don't believe me, but we really have a common enemy. Please stop it." The devil ancestor whispered, "Stop it and get the body." Chapter 507. In the spiritual world that was as hot as a flame, the Will of Fire whispered, "Stop it from getting a body." Sun Lang was silent for a moment, and then sneered, "Bullshit." The devil of antiquity's voice had a trace of dissatisfaction. "Do you doubt my words? I never believed you." Sun Lang sneered. "The people who entered the Great Bear Mountain back then are all dead. Many people have been searching for the truth over the years, but I'm sure that even the woman and her emperor don't know all the inside stories. At least, they won't know that the ancestor imperial army, which they regard as a national treasure, is planning to get a body." Then here comes the question. His expression was cold. "How do you know something that even they don't know? And after you know it, you should be making a fortune quietly, because that broken sword got a body, which means that you can also use the same method to get a new life, get rid of the shackles of weapons, and get a free body. Don't use your bad relationship as an excuse. No matter how bad your relationship is, you come from the same root. I don't believe that you enjoy the life of being the golden finger of the human military." "I know more than you think," the Will of Fire said calmly. The Will of Fire said calmly, "Your question is very complicated. Let me answer the most important point first, which is to point out the error in your words. The Princess of the Imperium may not know the truth, but how do you know that your emperor does not know the inside story?" Sun Lang was stunned at first, and then his pupils shrank slightly. The Devil of Fire said slowly, "It seems that you have figured it out." Sun Lang said coldly, "You mean that the emperor and that broken sword have reached a consensus in secret and acquiesced and even promoted the matter of the Great Bear Mountain and hid it from his baby daughter?" The Devil of Antiquity replied, "Yes." Sun Lang sneered, "Bullshit. The emperor's brain is not cramped. How could he allow that to happen? Why do you think I was finally settled? Wasn't it because of this gloomy and suspicious old thing? If the plan back then had succeeded, the devil of the Imperial Army would have occupied my body. What kind of monster would have been released? Didn't that old thing know?" The Will of Fire said, "The Emperor of the Empire is not an incompetent person. For him to make such a decision, he must have, or thinks that he has, something that can control it." Sun Lang interrupted it. "That's absolutely impossible. I know the old man's temperament. He is a qualified monarch. He knows how to weigh the pros and cons. He is careful enough. Even if there is only the slightest risk, he will not take it lightly. He must nip all the dangerous signs in the bud. Otherwise, he would not have hurriedly put away the bow after the birds are killed. Isn't it because he is afraid that I will return to the court and reward him based on my merits? Even if my merits are too high, it will be out of control." As he said this, he questioned, "So, how could he allow an ancient sky demon from the extraterritorial of the devil to get a powerful body?" The other party replied calmly, "You are right. The Emperor of the Empire is indeed such a qualified monarch. But don't forget, before he became a monarch, he was a human. A human has selfishness and desires. If he becomes a monarch and holds power and power above the country, then his selfishness and desires will expand to the extreme. At the same time, his mind will be disturbed by some major selfishness and desires, and he will become narrow-minded, short-sighted, and even unreasonable. Selfishness, desires." Sun Lang repeated these two words and said slowly, What kind of selfishness and desires can make a suspicious monarch take such a big risk? Can't you figure it out? The other party sighed. It is because you are human beings. Your desires are infinitely expanding, but your lifespan is so short. Especially for an emperor who controls the life and death of countless subjects and the power of a country. What can be sadder than having infinite desires and having an end to your lifespan? Sun Lang silently clenched his long halberd. His eyes changed. He already understood. As a monarch, as the most powerful person in the world, the information he has is far beyond that of ordinary people. It is precisely because he knows that he is destined to die. No matter what, he will not be able to escape. The current prosperous country, the implementation of government orders, and the enormous power will become meaningless sooner or later. The will of fire said casually, the enormous power will fall into the hands of others sooner or later. If his descendants are unworthy, it may fall into the hands of outsiders. The majesty of the royal family will be gone. How can he be willing to accept that? Monarchs are the most selfish and gloomy people in the world. Over the past hundreds of years, I have witnessed the death of more than a dozen divine emperors. Even the most benevolent and wise monarchs, although showing that they are calm about death in front of outsiders, are still afraid in private and try to find ways to prolong their lifespan. I have seen all their ugly behaviors. Then, how can the emperor of the Hutu Empire be an exception? He is even more arbitrary and independent than the divine emperors because there is no bishops, a traditional force with a long history, to check and balance him. The will of fire asked. Once he is driven and blinded by the temptation, who can stop him? Sun Lang seemed to understand something. Immortality. His smile was full of mockery. Indeed, there is no such thing as a wise monarch in the world. The wise monarchs praised in history, even if beautified by shameless officials and boring descendants, all show their true colors when it comes to immortality. They throw the wealth they took from the people in the world to the illusory mountains and to the daring necromancers. They are truly selfish to the extreme. In the end, don't they die slowly in fear and confusion? This is so satisfying. The will of fire was puzzled. That is indeed the case. But I am very curious. You used to be in a high position in the empire, and you were even second only to one person. But why do you have such a natural hostility to the entire ruling class? It doesn't seem to be an acquired hatred, but more like an innate instinct. However, this ancient, noble, and extremely senior artifact spirit did not know that the man in front of him not only had a natural hostility to the ruling class, but also planned to send Marxism to the divine power of flames with a bang for the empire. Sun Lang naturally skipped over this topic. He directly asked, then, how did that sword trick the emperor into taking the bait? Could it be that you guys still have the method to immortality? It's not the way to immortality that you're imagining. Well, you might not understand this, but it's impossible to achieve immortality with the human body. This is because your life factors determine that when you reach a certain age, your body will no longer be able to maintain the vigorous vitality of youth and will slide into the abyss of aging. I have known this since junior high school. You idiot. Although Sun Lang was complaining in his heart, he did not intend to show off because there were more important things. He motioned for the artifact's spirit to continue. And the real method of immortality, according to my deduction, is probably the process it wants to demonstrate to the emperor. The devil ancestor slowly said, if it can occupy your body, isn't it a good proof to the emperor that the method of immortality is effective? Generation after generation, young and fresh body after young body, the soul will always be the same. Sun Lang took a deep breath. Soul possession. Damn it, even I, a proper transmigrator, have transmigrated here. This bastard emperor actually wants to transmigrate his soul. Suddenly hearing this news, especially when it involved the secrets that had puzzled him for the past 2 years, made him feel complicated and confused for a moment. Yes, the cause, process, and result of the huge mystery of the Great Barren Mountain were all covered in layers of fog. Even the most critical parties could not grasp the whole picture of the matter. including him and the artifact, who had experienced it from the beginning to the end. Even the emperor and the empress, who had planned it directly and indirectly. Now, he finally figured out something. Sun Lang froze in place and suddenly burst into laughter. In his laughter, there was realization, relief, anger, sarcasm, and ridicule, as if he had heard the funniest thing in the world. Of course, most of the laughter was happiness. The devil ancestor said, "Do you think it's interesting?" "Yes. What could be more interesting than this?" Sun Lang wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. "I thought the Great Barren Mountain incident was the Emperor's scheming and political strife. It turned out to be just the ridiculous and contemptible selfishness of an old dog, which led to the awkward situation of the Empire today. The comedy effect of lifting a stone and dropping it on one's own foot is 100 times more dramatic. Serves you right. Serves you right." His smile became ferocious and more unbridled. "And that woman, after all the scheming, in the end, your father didn't want to pass the throne to any of you at all. He wanted to be the emperor forever. Now you're doing your best to assist him, giving him advice, doing his dirty work, and even attacking me. Isn't that what your father wants? Congratulations, congratulations. I wish you to be appointed as the crown prince as soon as possible, and then be possessed by a bad old man. Ha ha." Sun Lang looked up to the sky and laughed, and then grinned at the will of fire. "Tell me, I'll wait for that woman to be possessed by her father, and then *CK her. Does that count as taking revenge on two enemies at once?" The will of fire was deeply shocked. It had been hiding in the depths of the kingdom of fire all these years, coldly watching everything in this country. If the theocracy and the imperial power were not bound, there would be countless distortions and ugliness. When the two were combined, the effect was even more outstanding. It had seen a lot of battles, but it was the first time it had heard of such an explosive way of playing. Sun Lang also broke free from his anger and realized what undignified words he had just said. He waved his hand subtly and said, "Forget it. It's disgusting to think about it. I'm afraid that the chicken will skip work. It's better to take revenge one by one. We can't mix them together." The devil ancestor also breathed a sigh of relief. If Sun Lang really had such a strong taste, he would have to wait until the emperor possessed Empress. At that time, it would be too late. It said, "This kind of thing, don't mix personal desires. You must solve the problem cleanly and decisively. You can't drag it out. If you like women, I can give you some." Sun Lang suddenly looked up and said in shock, "What did you say?" The other party was a little confused. "Isn't it just women? What are you making a fuss about?" Some kind of expression on Sun Lang's face disappeared in an instant. He nodded proudly and said, "It's nothing. Don't talk about this kind of small thing. Do I look like the kind of person who lacks women? That's true. With your ability, even if you directly go to another country, you can have as many women as you want." The other party was convinced. After all, with the structure and identity of both of them, these things were degrading. So the two strong men who stood at the top of the world continued to discuss important matters. It could be seen that the other party's words of giving you some women had greatly won Sun Lang's favor. However, Sun Lang's extremely suspicious character could not be changed by such small favors. He said pleasantly, "Old Fire, let's continue with the previous question." Old Fire. The other party was a little surprised and repeated the name. It actually felt very interesting. After all, in this world, there were very few people who were qualified to communicate with it. There was almost no one who dared to give a nickname that it would not feel offended. He quickly said, "Go ahead." Sun Lang asked, "Even if what you said is true, that the emperor wants to live forever and that sword wants to be reborn, and the two have reached a consensus, what does that have to do with you? Why are you in a hurry to stop it?" "First of all, I have to answer your initial question. This is the root of everything," the will of fire said. "Now, among the 5 major countries, why is the Hutu Empire the strongest? It's because they have the advantage. Back then, They robbed the so-called ancestor Imperial Army and found that the strange energy that their martial artists have called vital energy can directly activate the sword. Meanwhile, the other countries have to work hard to decipher and study the war legacy in their hands. One side can be used directly, the other side needs to be digested. The difference is obvious. Sun Lang nodded in agreement. I don't know why the ancient skills passed down by you humans can resonate with our weapons. But what is certain is that the commonality of this energy use is the foundation of its possession research. In other words, the will of fire said slowly, this method of possession is not suitable for me. In other words, even if it succeeds, I won't have a share because the two of us are completely different from each other from the inside out. Sun Lang said with a subtle expression, that's a very convincing way of putting it. It's not beneficial to me. Naturally, I don't want to talk about it. Moreover, I've always been on bad terms with it. The will of fire said again, it seems that it has obtained a body and the emperor has obtained immortality. For the kingdom of fire and me, it's harmful. After all, hundreds of years have passed. Whether you believe it or not, I'm biased towards humans. We even helped you fight against the sky demon that you speak of. It said, believe me, we have a common enemy and common interests. This is the foundation of cooperation and cooperation. Moreover, this doesn't conflict with your original goal, does it? Chapter 508. This matter seemed a little complicated. It was also a little subtle. It was a sudden visit to seek an alliance. One of them used to be the spirit of the ancestral demonic weapon, and now it seemed to have become the best friend of mankind. It wandered in the human world hundreds of years ago, and after such a long time, it had regarded the interests of the Lihua kingdom as its own and had completely integrated into the divine power of flames. Now, for the welfare of the Lihua kingdom and all mankind, it wanted to stop its former compatriot, stop its evil plan, and stop the other party from colluding with the emperor of the evil empire in an attempt to rule the world. Such noble sentiments and selfless spirit of helping others, even turning against its former compatriots for the sake of mankind, and even fighting with it, such behavior was enough to be called a villain. We can now call it Optimus Prime. This Lihua spirit, who had the style of Brother Zhu Zi, sent an invitation to Sun Lang to form an alliance. But the problem was, Sun Lang's identity and motive were also quite subtle. He looked human, and he had made great contributions in the Hutu Empire, and his martial arts were ranked at the top of the empire. All kinds of extreme coincidences and the resources of the empire had turned him into the most efficient and terrifying killing machine in the history of the world in just 6 years. But, however, even though he looked no different from an empire citizen, he should be of a different race genetically. After all, he came from another world and was forcibly summoned here to fight a war. After the war, he was even abandoned after the birds were killed. No one would be able to tolerate such hatred. Therefore, for all the above reasons, he naturally had a very bad impression of the empire. Every day, he was thinking about how to seize the throne and how to destroy the imperial court. Just now, he had made a shocking statement about avenging 2 enemies with 1 stroke. It could be said that he was an audacious traitor of the country. Thinking about it, he was once the second in command of the 6 armies, worshipped and admired by countless soldiers and civilians. Everyone sincerely wished him good health and a long life. Such a good person was calculating things all day long that he shouldn't be calculating, and even flirting with the Russians in the north. What was this kind of thing called? Who was this kind of person? Therefore, it felt very strange. A little alien protectionist came to the former imperial marshal, who wanted to rebel, and said, "Come, let's stop the Demon King and save the world together." The sense of dissonance was too strong. How should I describe it? It was just like how Optimus Prime came to the Joker for a righteous reason and invited him to kill Batman together with him for the sake of world peace. That's why I said, even though I really want to F asterisk 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 him, I don't want to F asterisk 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 him with a weird guy like you for such a subtle reason. That was probably how it felt. Sun Lang's mood was very subtle. To be honest, he was a little overwhelmed when he heard such news. What was going on with this huge conspiracy that had suddenly unfolded? And from the mouth of someone like you? The other party seemed to be full of sincerity and was still negotiating with him in a friendly tone. Only you have enough motivation, strength, and will to carry out this operation. The Hudo Empire is too powerful. The enemy is the monarch of this country and the most lethal weapon in the world. It is like an impregnable fortress. Only by attacking from the inside can we have a chance to collapse it. Sun Lang smiled faintly. Huh, it sounds like you've been paying attention to me for a long time. The other party said, to be honest, when I found out the truth and their purpose, I began to look for your whereabouts because I knew that you were the most likely person to stop them. But it's not easy to find a needle in a haystack. The Empire deliberately hid your information and erased your past. I suggested that the Divine King praise your achievements, even build a statue of you, and even ask other countries to do it together. I've done countless efforts, and I won't let go of even the slightest possibility. I hope that you will show up one day. Sun Lang nodded and said, Oh, so it's you who helped me increase my reputation. This is just one of the many efforts that are not very conspicuous. The other party's tone was meaningful, as if he was referring to something else. He said again, Of course, I'm not sure where you are, how you are, or what your mood is like. I can't put all my bets on an illusory shadow, so I'm also choosing a backup candidate. Sun Lang's expression changed. It's her? The devil ancestor said, Yes, the Princess of Empire seems to be the most suitable candidate. According to my original plan, if you don't show up, then we will always have closer and closer cooperation with Tensei Province. When the time is right, we will reveal this secret to her. Because she has enough courage and ability, and her heart is ruthless enough. After knowing her father's plan, even if it's to protect herself, she will do her best to stop it from happening, not to mention the temptation of the throne. In any case, this kind of crazy thing must be stopped. Sun Lang snorted. But this plan has a fatal weakness. Although there's a chance to stop the Emperor, you can't stop that woman from being interested in that broken sword. After all, immortality is the obsession of all human beings. This kind of obsession, if the old man has it, that woman will definitely have it too, yes. This gives me a headache, but you've finally shown up. The other party's tone seemed a little relaxed. In this case, everything will be on the right track. I'm much more relieved. Sun Lang did not speak. He was deep in thought. The Will of Fire was also waiting quietly. It knew that this was a matter of great importance, and it was not a decision that could be made easily. After a long time, Sun Lang looked up and smiled. The cost of hiring me is very high. The other party smiled as well. Money doesn't mean much to you and me, but I also know that wealth is the best path to move through human society. There will always be a time when we need it, which is why it's better to be prepared. Over the past few hundred years, I've accumulated quite a bit of savings. I'm sure it can satisfy your request. As a capitalist mentor who had enlightened a conscientious private entrepreneur like Zhang Jianyuan, Sun Lang undoubtedly had all the characteristics of a law-abiding and honest businessman. He showed a sincere smile and said, You're right. Money really doesn't mean much. If I need money, I can steal and rob. Who can stop me? The Will of Fire thought about it and found that it made sense. Certainly, it mused. For champions like us, tangible matter is certainly something that is easily obtainable. Then, you want intangible wealth, right? I'm the source of power in the Li-Fire Kingdom. You can say that I control most of the technology of the Order of Flames. There are some things that you'll definitely be interested in, but considering the thoughts of the Divine King and the bishops, I can't make it too obvious. I believe you can understand. Sun Lang said proudly, Are you referring to those guns and cannons? Hutu has its own national conditions. The warriors of the Imperial Army can beat everything, and they are invincible in the world. What do we need those guns and armor for? No matter how sharp your cannons are, you still have to retreat when faced with Hutu's army. A real man should temper his body, transform his aura, and refine his spirit, waiting for the day when he becomes innate and divine. Then, he can destroy any armor or machine with a single punch. That's what a real man is. What kind of ability is it to rely on external objects? The will of fire was speechless again. Although it was very upset that flame technology, which Livefire was proud of, was said to be worthless, and it could not refute. After a moment, it said in a muffled voice, "You don't want this, and you don't want that. What do you want?" What else could it do? What did the other party want? Occupying Mingzhou and facing Livefire to the north, trade was a matter of mutual benefit. There was no need to bring it to the negotiation table. However, the other party did not want money or technology. What else did he want? Give him women? He didn't seem to be very interested either. Sun Lang also put on a troubled expression. My heavenly empire is vast and has abundant resources. If you want to find some rare items, it's quite troublesome. He thought about it, but could not come up with anything. He looked up and said, "Let's forget about it. I'll go home and think about it. We'll talk about it again in a few days." The other party rejected him. "No, the reason I can communicate with you this time is because I used this servant as a medium. It's very troublesome to create a servant. We can't waste another one. There won't be many opportunities to communicate face to face like this in the future. We better set a tone now, but I really can't think of anything valuable." Sun Lang scratched his head, a little distressed, and then said, "How about this? We're about to reach a long-term strategic partnership anyway. Let's put this matter aside for now. You can give me a deposit to show your sincerity." The Will of Fire said in a strange tone, "How much money do you want?" "This is not about money." If it's money, I do need it. After all, I'm going to the imperial capital to fight the emperor. Two fists can't fight against four hands. I'll need friends, so I have to use money. In this world, you can't just rely on favors. You have to be able to pay for people to follow you. How much? You can give as much as you want. I don't know much about economics. Sun Lang counted on his fingers. Well, other than money, you can also give me some technology and weapons. After all, although we martial artists don't need those things, they can be used to guard our homes and equip our soldiers. After all, Mingzhou is about to become my base and our capital to fight against the South. The combat power of the army is also very important, right? The stronger Mingzhou is, the louder my voice in the imperial court. All right, there's also people. Can you give them as much as you want? I plan to form a foreign army. They're all foreign mercenaries. This is a special force that can play a decisive role in the battle against the evil imperial power. In addition, you can also send some researchers over. Right. I almost forgot. You're a dark theocratic country. Moreover, if you add a scope to a toy gun at home, you'll be dragged to the court to be hung and beaten. As the former marshal of the Hutu Empire, I'm very worried about the human rights of your country. So, give us some of your prisoners. Our celestial empire can help to reform and educate them. By the way, I like felons. The more serious the crime, the better. There's one more thing. After we complete this transaction, we'll be good friends, right? Then on our side, there are honest and legal businessmen who want to go to your country to open a factory and sell some things in order to support their families. You'll definitely give them tax-free policies and protection. Also, the thugs and researchers mentioned above, it's best if they're beautiful Russian girls. Hearing this, the Will of Fire finally couldn't help but ask, "Didn't you say you don't want women?" Sun Lang said proudly, "Although I don't lack women, it's quite romantic to have some vases from foreign countries. At least they're pleasing to the eye, isn't it?" What happened next made the ancestor the devil more and more depressed. It even wondered if it was a mistake to get in touch with Sun Lang so early, because the other party was raising his finger, chattering endlessly, and asking for an exorbitant price. This was really too undignified. As the ancestor the devil, it was of ancient and noble origin. It was the source of power of the Lihua country, which created one of the 5 great countries in this world. It had extremely terrifying power and could be said to be standing at the top of the world. Although Sun Lang was only a human, the human's achievements and strength had surpassed the shackles of the race, and he was qualified to be respected by it. So, everyone was at the same level, and it was just a matter of talking about something. What a big matter. Can't you settle it with just a few words? Do you have to be so long-winded? Phew, that's pretty much it. After Sun Lang finished speaking, he asked, "Have you remembered everything clearly? Let's take this statement as the standard. That's all for now. If I think of anything else in the future, let's add to the discussion." Ouch. Do you want to write it down and write 2 copies? As soon as he finished speaking, there was a flash of fire, and a crimson crystal plate fell into Sun Lang's hands. On it was densely written with small characters, in Chinese and Slalu, recording the content of the transaction just now. This thing must be a top secret. If the emperor and the bishops saw this thing, they would probably vomit 3 liters of blood. It could be said that it was a humiliation to the country. Those who didn't know would think that the Lihua country had been beaten up by Sun Lang, and this was an unconditional surrender and post-war compensation agreement. Sun Lang touched this crystal plate, and his heart was very happy. The will of fire snorted coldly. "Is this the purpose of your scheming? You don't have to do this. Next time, you can just tell me directly. I won't bargain with you, because to me, these are not important. If you can successfully stop their conspiracy, these conditions can be increased by 10 times. Really? Sun Lang was pleasantly surprised. Then I'll increase it by 10 times. The will of fire ignored his words as if nothing had happened. Some things don't need to be said too clearly. In order to ask you to do this, I have paid a sufficient price. I hope you can fulfill your promise. Some things don't need to be said too clearly, right? Sun Lang's expression didn't change. He smiled and said, "Same to you. Your brother's example is here. You also know the price of deceiving or angering me. I hope you're prepared for it. I have already said that I am very sincere. I hope that my next action will change your preconceived prejudice and doubts about me. I sincerely hope that we can cooperate happily." Sun Lang smiled and said, "Of course." Humph. It even agreed to such conditions. It seems that this guy is after something big. But what does it want to do? In short, I'll scrape to my heart's content first. It would be a waste if I don't take advantage of it. Playing tricks with me. I'll play you to death. Chapter 509. The sea of fire exploded, the sparks dissipated, and the world around them became what it used to be. The halberd of the sea in his hand spun a few times and paused on the ground. Sun Lang took back the dragon crouching chain with one hand and wrapped it around his left arm, releasing the shackles that bound the seraph. Most of the fire mist in the seraph had disappeared, leaving only a fist-sized, which was probably something like a core, which was still expanding and contracting like a heart. Sun Lang put the crystal plate into his pocket and said, "How do we end this?" He was talking about the part that involved the kingdom of life fire. The voice of the ancient demonic spirit came out from the heart core. The fire mist had consumed most of its form, and the remaining amount was not enough to maintain the spiritual communication that was extremely secretive and fast. Therefore, it could only use the most primitive voice transmission. It replied, "Just leave it to us. From now on, you will not encounter any obstacles or difficulties from the distant fire. Just focus on dealing with the south." But Sun Lang said, "Be more specific." "Okay," the ancestor explained, "the death messenger and the lone walker have turned back. The 2 flame guards can stay as your assistants and be responsible for communicating and coordinating the cooperation between the 2 sides." Sun Lang asked, "Courier was under the command of the bishops, and Long Wanda was a warrior of the divine emperor. The latter is fine, but if the former stays, it will be tantamount to defection. Want to attract the attention and backlash of the bishops? It doesn't matter. The essence of a political game is compromise and exchange. We will suppress the backlash from the bishops and force them to compromise in exchange for not thoroughly investigating the death messenger's private pursuit of a lone walker and ignoring the origin of this unrecorded seraph." "Huh. Didn't you build this seraph?" "Wait." Sun Lang suddenly understood and said, "You bet on both sides." "No, it turns out that you also have pawns in the bishops, and their positions don't seem to be low." "Humph. It seems that you don't trust the divine emperor." "Humans are cunning, suspicious, and selfish, especially kings. The more talented and bold the divine emperor is, the more I will be wary of him. In the words of the people of your empire, it's better to be prepared. The artifact spirit said meaningfully, I have stayed in the Li-Fire kingdom for hundreds of years. Even if the people of the church are wary of me, the hundreds of years are enough for me to put a lot of useful chess pieces on this chessboard that is burning with fire. Sun Lang smiled faintly. I'm afraid it's not just Lihua's chessboard. Of course, but this should be a good thing. The devil laughed. We are now allies who are fighting side by side. It's a good thing for you that your allies are strong. Your recent military deployment on the border has made me uneasy. For the future peace between the two countries, I suggest that you withdraw your troops. Our troops are just passing by. Also, I think that opening up the borders for trade will help deepen the close cooperation between the two countries. What do you say? That's it. Are you kidding? I have played Civilization V for so many rounds. Do you think I will believe your nonsense? Sun Lang sneered in his heart, but on the surface he smiled and said, Yes, yes. Big brother, please help me a lot. We will always be the closest comrade in arms. For some reason, the will of fire actually heard some subtle malice from Sun Lang's words. It did not know what was going on. It said again, I will immediately arrange our agreement. Soon, the first batch of help will arrive. I will show you my sincerity. I hope you will respond. Sun Lang gave it a thumbs up. Don't worry. I will work hard on farming and focus on building up the technology tree. When the base is upgraded and developed, I will come to the south with a big wave. Wait, said the devil. There is not much time. We have to speed up. Sun Lang frowned and said, Do you think this is easy? Then why are you looking for me? You don't want me to go straight to the south, kill all the way to the capital, chop the emperor into minced meat, and then blow up the sword? If possible, the devil of the origin certainly hoped that Sun Lang would use this simple and crude method. But it also knew that Sun Lang would never do that, so it simply did not mention it. After all, Sun Lang was a strong man of the same level as it, not a man of sacrifice or a thug it raised. The two were partners on the level of interests. How could it do such a thing that would cause endless trouble for a little profit? Sigh. So, this was not a suitable time to meet. Originally, according to the original plan, if it could catch 1 or 2 hostages, it could exchange for the initiative in the following negotiations. The communication with him would not be so passive. Who knew that this guy would be so difficult to deal with? The devil of the origin threw these meaningless thoughts aside and said, What are you going to do? Sun Lang showed a charming smile and said in a magnetic voice, Vigorously develop the local economy, maintain good neighborly, friendly, and cooperative relations, and deepen the communication and contact with the central government. You have to serve the people wholeheartedly, maintain the clarity and transparency of public opinion, maintain communication with the central officials at all levels, make achievements, become an example of the court, and lead your colleagues to unite around His Majesty. You have to dare to speak, dare to tell the truth, dare to criticize the mistakes of your colleagues, and ensure that the central government's orders are strict. The devil of the origin sighed. Please speak frankly. Sun Lang spread out his hands and said, With Mingzhou and Songzhou as the base, the north is connected to Lihua. Take the general trend to the south, force the imperial court, give favors widely, control public opinion, form cliques, set up a mountain, form interest groups, seize power in the imperial court, make a decision, attack political enemies, and suppress the imperial power. The will of fire listened in a daze. Damn it, this group of Easterners was really famous for beating around the bush. They could actually say the same thing in such a righteous way. I see. This is your purpose. Since the royal family has betrayed you, you will take this country from them and leave them with no way to do anything? The vessel spirit of the ancestor muttered, Isn't it too slow? Sun Lang squinted and said, What? Do you want me to directly raise the flag of rebellion and violent revolution? The will of fire wished that Sun Lang would smash the emperor and the country into pieces. Such a result was undoubtedly the most in line with the interests of Lihua. But even if it thought with its butt, it knew that Sun Lang would certainly not use such a stupid method. It thought again and finally came to two conclusions helplessly. First, Sun Lang was very smart. Second, the idea he proposed was undoubtedly the most suitable way to solve the problem. So it sighed and said, "If you drag it out for too long, there will be problems." Sun Lang waved his hand and said no. First, the sword has only recently awakened, which means that the old emperor's plan has been delayed for 2 years. Everything has to start from the beginning. After all, it is not easy to take over a body. Think about how long I have been trained for. Second, even if the possession is successful, what's the problem? That may be a good thing. When the sword spirit of a sword enters the body of a human and has a free body, it also means that it has a more fatal weakness. He said faintly, "After all, humans are creatures that will die as long as they are killed." The vessel spirit of the ancestor was speechless. That was indeed the case. Once the sword spirit took over a body and became a human, it also meant that if the other party's head was cut off, he would not be able to live anymore. But if Sun Lang really dragged it out for 8 to 10 years, wouldn't it be a waste of money? Why did I come all the way here to give him so many things? Seeing that Sun Lang was rambling, the will of fire was gradually dissatisfied. But that dissatisfaction quickly dissipated. After all, even if he wanted to drag it out for 8 to 10 years, it would depend on whether the people of the empire would give him the chance. You can't escape, Sun Lang. Your fate is intertwined with the fate of the empire. Sooner or later, you'll have to settle this grudge. Now that you have reappeared, those who have betrayed you will take the initiative to find you, with fear and madness in their hearts, with crueler and more despicable means, and don't forget, your hands are also stained with blood. All of this is like a whirlpool of fate, involving everyone involved. You will have to face all of this sooner or later, and what I have to do is to give him a little push from behind, and speed up the process a little. Then it will be time to reap the fruits. Thinking of this, the will of fire's mood became cheerful, and it said, "The people of the imperial capital won't let you prepare for too long. When there are changes in the Li-Fire kingdom, the counterattack of Tensei province will come soon. Li-Fire will fully support you. Young Marshal, prepare to face your enemies." Sun Lang said faintly, "I know." Then our conversation can be said to have ended satisfactorily. "I'm very happy to have met you today, Sun Lang. You are undoubtedly the most powerful warrior among mankind, and even I have to respect your strength," the ancestor of the origin said. "Soon, a team will go to Mingzhou to negotiate with you. I hope this is a good start." Sun Lang said, "As long as you don't lie to me, this matter will also have a good end." "Of course not," the other party said with a smile. "You can be a little less suspicious and vigilant." "Is that so?" Sun Lang's smile became a little strange, and he asked, "Then can you honestly and sincerely answer a question from your new ally?" "What's a question?" Under the sky of Mingzhou, Sun Lang's smile was very pure, like a child's. He asked, "How many guys like you are there in total?" "3." The other party answered in a very frank tone, "Sword, spear, and armor. We all have our own souls and wills to assist our former masters in fighting better. That is to say, there is also an old man in the Jin kingdom." Sun Lang touched his chin and smiled as if nothing had happened. No one knew what he was thinking. "Yes, do you want to find another helper?" "I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. We are all top secrets of each country, and there is no opportunity for communication. That guy is very introverted and doesn't want to talk much. I tried to send someone to contact him before, wanted to pull him together to deal with the matter of Hoodoo, but there was no response at all." Sun Lang nodded and said, "Oh, according to the setting, he should be an introverted technology, nerd, lowly mechanical girl with 2 ponytails. And you are, well, forget it. Let's talk about this later. Yes, we can deal with the threat of Hoodoo together." For some reason, the will of fire seemed to want to skip this topic and said, "Right, if I didn't show up, what were you going to do with this servant of mine?" Sun Lang touched his chin and said, "At first, I was going to kill him and take back the orange equipment he dropped, but looking at him, I don't know if I could kill him completely. If there was a bit left on the armor, wouldn't it be terrible to take it back?" So at that time, I planned to take him to the extreme north, then punch him into the ice, bury him, and freeze him for 200 years first. The Will of Fire didn't know what Sun Lang meant and agreed. That is a good idea, but there's no need to do that now. This blazing angel armor could be considered a greeting gift. Sun Lang's expression didn't change and slowly said, I don't need this. The Will of Fire laughed and said, but someone will use it, won't they? Sun Lang said calmly, oh, how thoughtful. I was worried about what to use to get girls. If I use this as a gift, I'm afraid I can get a second base. As long as you like it. The progenitor, the devil, chuckled, and the last core of his heart turned into a blazing flame, like a curtain of fire, spreading through the cold body, washing away all traces of the user, repairing, strengthening, and resetting. At least in Sun Lang's perception, all the abnormalities of this body were quickly vanishing without a trace, until it became a pure, armed machine. I have unlocked all the restrictions of this blazing angel and strengthened it, but there is no auxiliary machine soul. You have to pay attention to that. The voice of the progenitor, the devil, gradually became inaudible and finally smiled. That is indeed a good girl. You have good taste. Sun Lang said calmly. Of course, my taste and luck with women are very good. Is that so? Then goodbye. Goodbye. Then, the last bit of fire mist turned into a spark that disappeared with the wind and was extinguished. Sun Lang looked at the blazing angel in front of him, which looked brand new and whose hostility had faded, and said nothing. He quietly clenched his fists. Both sides tacitly did not talk about one thing, but for some things, they already knew each other in their hearts. Resisting the idea of smashing the blazing angel in front of him into pieces, Sun Lang took a deep breath. I can't act rashly and alert the enemy. I can't give them a handle. I have to find a way to solve this matter. With this, maybe I can, but in Luo, what's going on? Her physique, is it related to this weight physique? Oh, F***CK. Sun Lang suddenly opened his eyes wide, as if he had thought of something, and then stomped his feet and cursed. Damn it. Damn it. I forgot about this. I only cared about showing off. Damn it. How could I forget to let it take a look at me? F***CK, 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 F***CK. Chapter 510. There was once a precious opportunity placed in front of me, but I didn't cherish it. That's because I was too pretentious. If God gave me a chance to load the file, I would definitely reach out my hand and ask my senior to stay, and then let it check my body and help me solve the problem that has troubled me for 2 years, so that I can send warmth and blessings to all the beautiful girls in the world. Sun Lang looked at the north with a confused face, and his back was very lonely. The wind rolled up the fallen leaves and swayed behind him. At least give me a way to contact you in case of an emergency. This great protection power was too strange. In the past 2 years, he had suffered a lot. He didn't know how many opportunities he had missed to enlighten confused girls. Every time, there was a beautiful girl who admired him with eyes full of reverence and almost took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. He had to put on a gentleman's face and reluctantly refuse. Because there were usually 2 results of not refusing. First, a life would be lost. Second, you would be regarded as a rogue. How should I put it? On one side was you, and on the other side was a girl with a flushed face, panting and soft face. There were only 2 of you at the scene, and only the 2 of you had physical contact. In this case, if you explained to the onlookers that you didn't do anything, there would be people who would believe you. Sun Lang spent 2 years in this very sad state. For a normal boy, this was simply too terrible. 2 years without breast energy, his cock was about to explode. In the past 2 years, he had traveled all over the world, not only to empty his mind and calm his anger, but also to find a way to resolve the Great Protection Power, but to no avail. The Great Protection Power was a variant of the power of the Great Sword, and was the highest power of the spiritual level in the world. At least he had dug up a lot of ruins of the Sky Demon and collected a lot of ancient, inherited secret techniques of human beings, but it was completely useless. But just now, he realized that he had spoken and communicated with the world's oldest spiritual body. The origin fire of the raging flame divine power nation was an ancient spiritual body on the same level as the ancestors' imperial army. In other words, it could at least make very useful suggestions, Mom. Hi. I've lost the watermelon and picked up the sesame seed. Sun Lang took out the crystal board sadly. The humiliating terms that could infuriate the divine emperor and the bishops were now meaningless in his eyes. He sighed and said, "What's the point of having so many hairy girls if I can't rub their breasts?" But, fortunately, there would be a chance for them to meet again in the future. He had been holding it in for 2 years. Besides, there was still Yin Luo. In fact, there was no need to rush. Sun Lang was sad for a while, but he quickly composed himself. He rubbed his chin and said thoughtfully, "That thing is not telling the truth. I'm afraid it has ulterior motives. It wants to add fuel to the fire and coax me into going to the capital to fight with the old thing. But it's right. Even if it didn't appear, I would have gone to the imperial capital sooner or later." He paced 2 steps on the spot, nodded, and said, "In other words, there are still many opportunities to feign civility with it. Amen. How about this? Let's work a little harder during this period of time. Don't just take advantage of it and not do anything. The next time you talk to it, if you achieve great results, then take the opportunity to ask it about this matter. It won't be good if it doesn't answer. Amen. Let's do that." If the will of fire knew that Sun Lang's fighting spirit had been ignited because of this reason, it probably wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. But Sun Lang had finally become spirited. Then, the threat from the north has come to an end. Next is to reorganize our forces and prepare for the uprising. Sun Lang stabbed the ocean halberd into the ground and pressed his hand on the blazing angel's armor plate. He closed his eyes, and a mysterious power flowed from his hand to the body of the blazing angel. "Open the door for your Uncle Iron You." The blazing angel armor opened in response. Sun Lang laughed and jumped in. A moment later, the gorgeous and ferocious blazing angel soared into the sky. It did a few third Brother Brown moves in the air and flew shakily in the direction of Marquis Jingon Fu. The blazing angel flew very quickly. In less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, it successfully landed in the third Brother Brown style and smashed a lot of flowers and plants. Sun Lang climbed out of the blazing angel that had fallen into the ground. He patted his head and spat a few times. The controls are too complicated. It's too unfriendly to the players. Not far away, there was a burst of laughter. The blazing angel is the highest achievement of the Parting Fire's military art. Only the most valiant warriors of the Order are qualified to dance with it, and before that, they have to go through strict training and tests. You didn't go through any training at all, and being able to make it fly is already very surprising. Sun Lang turned his head and saw Yin Luo walking over with a smile. He frowned. "Didn't I tell you to obediently hide? Why did you run out? If it was an enemy that came, I'm afraid your little life would be in danger." Yin Luo pursed his lips and smiled. "The blazing angel can fly like this. The pilot must be you. How could it be an enemy?" This blazing angel looks a bit different." Sun Lang's heart trembled. Then he gave a thumbs up and proudly said, "Of course it's because after I pulled out the pilot and smashed him to pieces, I used my supreme skills to throw light at him and grind him. I refurbished him inside and out. Of course it looks very different." Yin Luo nodded and said with a smile, "It's already been completely taken care of? Then, Sir Joseph." Sun Lang smiled and said, "I left a little mark on the 2 blazing angels. I can sense their position. Long Wanda is already on his way back. Everyone is happy." The girl first breathed a sigh of relief, and then showed a worried look. "But Lihua, you killed the pilot of this blazing angel. I'm afraid they won't let it go. Do you want to?" Sun Lang waved his hand and said, "It's not that serious. Before I killed him, I got a lot of useful information. The next thing is to get in touch with the Divine Emperor and use his power to counterbalance the revenge of the bishops. This involves a political game. We have enough chips, so don't worry too much." Yin Luo nodded as if he understood. This kind of political thing, the girl had always been confused. Since Sun Lang said so, he could be a little relieved. Sun Lang looked at Yinluo's faint smile that came from the bottom of his heart, and his heart suddenly tightened. I thought that I didn't have to hide anything from you. The content of the negotiation and communication with the devil ancestor could not be known to anyone. This was a silent, tacit agreement between him and the other party. After all, it was a matter of great importance. And Yinluo's secret, whether she had a relationship with the devil ancestor, and what was going on with her physique that could resist the great protection force. These things, before they were clarified and solved, could not be known to Yinluo, but Sun Lang could not help but ask cautiously, Yinluo. The girl seemed to be absent-minded. Hearing this, she came back to her senses and said with some panic and expectation, "What's wrong?" Sun Lang was thinking about something and did not notice the girl's strangeness. He just asked cautiously, "Well, when you were studying in the kingdom of Lihua, did you meet any strange people?" Yinluo was stunned at first, and then immediately showed a helpless and tangled expression. He rolled his eyes and sighed. "Many. Which kind are you referring to?" "Is it?" Sun Lang laughed dryly and organized his words. "It's the kind, similar to an old grandpa, who will give you a task from time to time and give you some rewards." Yinluo tilted her head and said, "Principal?" "No, no." Sun Lang thought again, and then with a mysterious face, said in a low voice, like the kind of big brother who is watching all the time. Yinluo said with a look of surprise, "Court? What are you surprised about? Can that kind of thing be related to surprise?" Sun Lang complained loudly, and then waved his hand. "Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." He sighed secretly in his heart. With Yinluo's carefree personality, lying would be seen through a glance. It seems that the devil did not directly communicate with her. I still don't know what the other party's intentions are. However, I still need to prepare for the worst and plan for a rainy day and come up with countermeasures. Sun Lang was thinking when he suddenly realized that Yinluo seemed to be a little strange. Look up." Yinluo straightened his back and stood very steadily. He didn't look sideways as he looked at him, looking like a good child. Sun Lang touched his chin and began to think again. Look up." Yinluo blinked her eyes and looked at him with a naive and innocent look. Her big eyes sparkled as she looked at him. Sun Lang said with a strange expression, "What's wrong? Is there something?" The girl's expression became shy and she whispered, "Don't you have anything to say to me?" What the hell? When did the affection level reach this level? Sun Lang's dog eyes instantly lit up, and he jumped in front of Yinluo and said loudly, "Yinluo, I want you. You're asking for trouble." The girl covered Sun Lang's mouth, and her face turned red. "Why are you suddenly saying crazy things?" Sun Lang broke free from the girl's slender hand and looked like he wanted to have a baby. He smiled and said, "I know, come, let's go to the room and talk in detail." Only then did Yinluo come back to his senses. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "What are you thinking?" Sun Lang was also stunned. Huh? Doesn't the relationship between the male and female lead become closer after every big event? According to the rules, this time should be the time to have a child. Have a child, your head. I'm not talking about this. Then what is it? It's... Yinluo became shy again, and her eyes kept glancing to the side. Sun Lang followed her gaze. He saw the seraph. He understood in an instant. Someone will always need it. The voice of the ancestor, the devil, echoed in his ears. Sun Lang's expression didn't change, but his hands trembled slightly. Yinluo hadn't noticed his strangeness and looked at him pitifully. "Can't I? I know this thing is very precious, and I don't know what you're going to do with it, but can I drive it? Just once will do. I wanted to drive it for a long time." "Oh no, this guy looks a bit cute now." That was because he felt that his request was a little too much, so he was a little embarrassed and hesitant. There was a little expectation in his eyes, and there was a little flattery that was naturally revealed. It was just like a puppy watching you eat, staring straight at you and wagging its tail. Just with its eyes and actions, it expressed the meaning of wanting. "Well, this is simply..." "Wait, Sun Lang, oh Sun Lang, How can you be bewitched by this level of beauty? Unless Luo drags you into the house and uses her pair of despicable and dangerous breasts to torture you, and then uses torture, such as suffocation and restraint, to persecute your penis. Only in such a serious situation can you compromise and surrender. Other than that, you can't waver. In short, it's best not to let Luo touch this thing first. Sun Lang thought of the profound words of the ancestor, the devil. It was better to believe it than not. For this kind of thing, he still had to be more careful. He pressed his hands on Luo's shoulders and said seriously, "If it's anything else, even my chastity and ancestral chromosomes, I can give it to you. But Luo, don't forget where this seraph came from. I'm very good at martial arts, so I'm naturally not afraid, but you—" At this point, he stopped and then said with a sincere expression, "So, before you're sure that it's harmless, it's better for you not to touch it." There was some disappointment on the girl's face. She pouted slightly, like a little girl who had missed the little dress she wanted. She was a little emotional, but very quickly, after seeing the worry in Sun Lang's eyes, her dissatisfaction suddenly disappeared. She seemed to have realized something. She looked seriously and carefully into Sun Lang's eyes. After staring for a while, she slowly nodded. "I know. Everything is fine, right?" Sun Lang's tone was calm and firm. "Yes, everything will be fine. Then let's put this thing aside for now." Luo used great willpower to shift his gaze away from the seraph and try to make his tone as relaxed as possible. "Speaking of which, I'm not qualified to drive the seraph. Back then, the bishops rejected my promotion to the Flame Guard." That group of old fogies. Sun Lang walked out with her and threw the priceless seraph aside. For some reason, after seeing Luo, the anxiety and uneasiness in his heart gradually subsided. He looked at the clear sky and suddenly said, "Luo, I seem to have said before that I would give this seraph to you, but now there's a problem. But I still went back on my words. The delivery date will be temporarily postponed. As compensation, I'm going to give you another good thing. No matter what the relationship between the devil and Luo was, he had to be prepared for the worst." The girl smiled and said, "I don't want anything weird." Sun Lang also smiled gently. "That's not something strange." He lowered his head, his eyes flashing with the light of reminiscence. His expression seemed to be sighing, but also seemed to be hesitating. In the end, it turned into a relieved smile and said softly, "How about I give you a sword?" Luo patted the scabbard at his waist. "But I already have Jinghong." Sun Lang smiled. "That sword is a little better than Jinghong." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.